Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... the smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work.
It's crap. It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show on a gloriously hot summer's day where once again we're all just going to try and stay alive as long as we can, because of course summer is now just really the death knell for our entire nation. Good luck, everybody. I'm on air until 1. You've got Ian Collins afterwards, and you know, you've got a lot of other stuff going on today, but I'm just hoping that you, like me, can make it to the end of the day despite the 30+ degrees heat. Good luck, everyone. I mean, genuinely, we are living in a mad world where this lovely, beautiful, hot summer's day is greeted with, oh, summer heat, health alert, what are we all going to do? We're all going to die. What a load of absolute codswallop. Enjoy the heat. You might need to drink a bit of extra water. You might want to sit in the shade for some of the day. Your office might be quite hot. We've got the aircon on full blast. It's not that cool in here, but somehow we will survive. Goodness me, what has this country become? Anyway, should we go on to the business of the show? Because this is the home of common sense. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, and say all that heat around you, we have got lots to come before 1 o'clock. Don't forget, if you miss any of the show, you can always look at my YouTube page called The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, cunningly, so you can find it easily. You hit subscribe, never have to miss a thing. Coming up on this show, we're going to be looking at more than 50,000 illegal migrants crossing the channel in small boats since Keir Starmer took office in July last year. That is what official figures from the Home Office are set to show later today. Total expected to rise after a further 430 migrants made the journey from France just on Monday. That is the equivalent under Labour of, this is extraordinary, one illegal migrant arriving in this country, sorry, one desperate refugee, must use the correct terminology, one desperate refugee arriving in the country every 11 minutes. So if you wonder why there was a problem, if you wonder why people were protesting against migrant hotels, wondering why we haven't got any money to spend on anything else, wondering why you're seeing this spate of crime that we're seeing, yeah, explains quite a lot, does it not? This comes as Tory party leader Kemi Badenoch called yesterday for asylum seekers to be put in camps rather than costly homes and hotels. 100% 100% with her on that. I would love to hear your thoughts on both of those stories. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with me on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs £1, standard network rate message. Also, very interestingly, Keir Starmer, we are told by Downing Street spokespeople, would not call shoplifters scumbags. This comes after police officers told a shopkeeper in Wrexham in Wales to take down a sign calling shoplifters scumbags. North Wales police were forced to clarify the law on Monday, confirming that putting the sign up was not illegal. Still some question marks about whether or not you can have pictures of your scumbag shoplifters in the window to say these are the people who've been stealing from this store. I'm rather of the view that if they did say that was illegal, I'd take that one to court if I were you, because I'm pretty sure that anyone on that jury, including me, would not convict you. Plus, the small matter of war in Europe. Ukraine could agree to stop fighting and cede territory already held by Russia as part of a European-backed plan for peace. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky told European leaders at a Zoom meeting yesterday that they must reject any settlement proposed by Donald Trump in which Ukraine gives up further territory, and that Russia could be allowed to retain some of the land it has taken. Wow, what a massive concession that would be. But a lot of fears around that Alaska summit on Friday in terms of what Donald Trump is going to agree without Zelensky even there, or even a NATO leader there. I would love to hear your thoughts on Ukraine as well. 0344 499 1000. Is it just about getting peace, end the war under whatever circumstances? Or what on earth have the Ukrainian people been fighting for, and we've been helping to fund with weapons and money for the Ukrainian people, if we're just going to let Putin have that win? Or is that, frankly, a price worth paying to get peace? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Let's get the thoughts right now on all of those topics and plenty more from my colleague, my partner in crime in the studio today, Tom Slater. He's the editor of Spiked Online, who regularly joins us on a Tuesday. Morning to you.
Morning, Julie.
Sweltering hot morning. You worried about dying later today?
That hadn't crossed my mind, no, but that's certainly...
You obviously not been watching the BBC.
It is incredible. At what point did the summer become terrifying?
But genuinely, I know people. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when I lived through 1976. But I was living in America in 1976 in the Midwest, when everyone here was going on. This is when we had old-fashioned temperatures. It was like 80 degrees. It was 80 degrees a lot. Everyone was very hot here. It was 120 in the shade where I lived. Our school closed in April because it was no longer possible to basically not have children fainting in the classroom behind the glass. Primary schools are always like mostly glass, those walls. And so we just had a whole I mean, I was 8 years old. It was brilliant. We had the whole 8, 9 years old, the brilliant summer, 120 degrees. I mean, we all survived. It's amazing. And again, they always forget the small point is, and that, winter, we don't have a warning every day that people might die because it's cold in winter, do we?
No,
and
absolutely.
Yet 9 out of 10 people who die in any temperature-related death, it's the cold, not heat, and that includes in Africa.
No, absolutely. And that fact tells you everything you need to know about why do we always hear about heat, health alerts. Why do we always see those new weather maps they've got up where if it's about 30 degrees, it's no longer just red, it's kind of
like
black.
Dark purple.
So this is clearly because it's kind of setting a certain tone, isn't it, about climate change, making you worried about it.
It's propaganda.
So obvious, and I think people are seeing through that now, aren't they? Because everyone knows from their own childhood that 30-degree heat is not panic stations.
No, it's hot. It's hot, and it can be unpleasantly hot if you're in an office or without aircon. But it's perfectly doable, perfectly livable. I mean, it's just madness. But again, if you want to know just how inaccurate and how propaganda based and just sort of agenda based news is in this country, and it's BBC, it's Sky, it's ITV, they're all the same. I mean, DC is the worst of the worst. But it's just, that tells you if you can't trust them on things like the weather, right? How can you trust them on things like, was that Al Jazeera journalist who was killed by the IDF a journalist, or was he actually a Hamas terror cell leader? Was he someone who celebrated October the 7th, who had selfies with Yahya Sinwar? And I mean, how much? But they don't report that. They say that Israel's claimed that. Well, no, they've actually shown the proof of it. So, I mean, I just don't think I can trust a single word I see on mainstream media. And I did not feel that a few years ago.
No, and I think they haven't even realised how much politics and bias has corrupted what they do. It's the kind of water that they swim in, so therefore they don't even realise that they're doing it. But as soon as you get wise to the kinds of biases, the kinds of ways in which things are being shaped, you see it everywhere.
I mean, and this is opinion, radio and TV. This is what we do. I'm employed to give my opinion. But it's based on the facts. I mean, I change my opinion if the facts are, if I get new facts or the facts change. But yeah, it's extraordinary. That's supposed to be, there is nowhere I can go now for completely unbiased factual news in the mainstream at all. But anyway, let's talk about boat crossings, because again, desperate migrants fleeing France. Of course, they're illegal migrants. They are largely young men of fighting age. 50,000 is likely to be the number that we are going to be seeing today, the official figures, because we already had 49,797 officially in the latest set of figures, and once you add in Monday's 430, ta-da, you're over 50,000. It is extraordinary when you break it down to one illegal migrant arriving every 11 minutes, despite Keir Starmer promising to smash the gangs. Can we all at least agree? I'm not sure the gangs are smashed.
Certainly not on today's evidence. I mean, he's only really been smashing the record for number of migrants come over in this particular period of time. I mean, it's 50% up on last year, as you say, absolutely. And this was always going to happen. I mean, it was clear that for all the problems with the Rwanda plan, with that falling with the last government, there was always going to, and the obviously well-earned perception that this Labour government was going to be a softer touch, even more so than the previous government.
It's almost like the migrants got mobile phones and can see these things.
Exactly. It's almost as if they're paying attention to these things. It's almost as if the people smugglers are paying attention to these things. There was evidence that people were holding back on the crossings because they wanted to see how the election panned out. So this was obvious to everyone apart from the Labour Party. But and the fact that they thought that if they would just get in there, because they're nicer people and they're more competent people and they're not Tories, this will work itself out.
It's amazing how many issues that they were absolutely, whether it's growth in the economy, whether it's dealing with the EU, trade, whether it's boat migrants, I mean, you name it. Don't worry, one that's interesting. They obviously massively underestimated how hard these things are to do and massively overestimated their competence. My biggest issue with Labour is not their policies or their beliefs, it's their abject incompetence. I mean, they are so beyond useless. There takes a certain amount of arrogance and chutzpah, I think, to be someone who is so incompetent at their job that they think that they would be really good at running the country. If you're that much of an also-ran, but you want to run the country, I want someone brilliant to run the country. And I don't mean you have an Oxbridge PhD, I don't mean that, but I just want someone brilliant who's got proved brilliance at. Again, I think that someone who has run logistics at Tesco should run the country. I'm absolutely serious. I think someone who gets how to get stuff done, manage people and get stuff done, and you know what, it's suddenly a barbecue day, not a rainy day, right, suddenly everything is in the supermarket that I need for a barbecue. Those people can get the job done. I think you could transfer those skills to government better than you can transfer the skills of being, I don't know, a trade union activist for a healthcare charity. Or
a human rights lawyer, as the case might be. I mean, if anything, that seems to be a hindrance to being an effective leader in this era in which we live.
Well, did you see Jackie Smith, former Home Secretary, of course, for Labour, and she has been doing the rounds for the media on another subject we're going to talk about a little bit later, on getting more builders trained. A sensible policy. I'm all in favour of that. Of course, they'll still have to do their diversity targets and all that nonsense at uni. They'll probably have a rainbow lanyard test as part of the qualification. But she was being asked repeatedly on the media this morning. I just kept like, what time is she on? Everyone, I want to see what else she's being asked. And she was basically saying, look, it's not our fault. She was basically saying it's not a responsibility. We're dealing with a problem that built up over years under the Tories, and now we've got this problem. And it's like, well, OK, so when does a 48%, 50% rise in the number of migrants arriving, when does that become Labour's fault and Labour's responsibility? That question was asked repeatedly, was not answered.
And especially because they haven't got an answer. We all know this. I mean, they have tried to tinker around the edges of this problem, strike up certain deals with places in Iraqi Kurdistan, trying to crack down on where the gangs kind of originate.
Brilliant.
Obviously the deal with the French, the 17 in, 1 out plan, which might be even worse than that if some people's analysis turns out to be true. They refuse to kind of grasp the nettle, really, which of course is the ECHR, it's our human rights set up, the inability of us to deport someone even if they've come to the country and committed a string of sexual offences.
Their solution is going to be, we're going to quietly give a load of people leave to remain, but not necessarily grant asylum, but get them off the list. We're going to quietly deport a few people back to countries where we frankly have already been deporting them, or we'll pay people. And we're going to, and I know what they're going to do absolutely, is they're going to put people into housing, private housing, so we're not really able to identify where they are. As opposed to people, I mean, there's actually an interactive map you can find which literally says where asylum hotels are in your local area. And I've looked it up, very accurate, check them out, very accurate. Now, you know, that they're just going to try and hide the problem because they think the problem is people knowing about it, talking about it and protesting it. That's the problem, not the actual arrival of, you know, 50,000 fighting age men whose identity we know nothing of from some of the most dangerous war-torn countries in the world. And yes, you can say, well, that's why they're desperate. Well, they weren't desperate by the time they got on those dinghies in France, and they're not my problem. I don't care anymore. I think the British public has said, we don't care anymore. We're done. That's it. Close the doors. What do you make of Kemi Badenoch's suggestion that actually we should look at housing asylum seekers in camps instead of hotels? You just get rid of them quicker, but crucially, they need to not be a burden on the public, not taking up hotel space. I mean, Bournemouth, brilliant holiday resort. You know, I used to go to party conferences there. 3 major hotels, big hotels, taken over for migrants. Well, those are people who are those hotel spaces not available for holiday makers, which pushes up prices for them, you know, in other hotels. But also, those are people who are not spending on the beach, spending in the restaurants, ordering taxis. Well, they're probably driving the taxis. Who'd be kidding? But you know, I bet you can get an Uber delivery very quickly in Bournemouth as a result. No, but there is a massive impact on local economy, and if you put people into housing, there's a massive impact on local rents.
Oh no, absolutely, and it's something where you used the phrase earlier to sort of treating with the symptoms or pushing the problem around. That's exactly what successive governments have done under the Tories. There were kind of other options at their disposal, kind of old army bases and so on, but there were, again, investigations saying that was terribly inhumane, and therefore you end up with the hotels. Now we end up with more of the HMOs. It's just constantly pushing the problem around, and whether or not you're talking about, you know, tents or an encampment or whatever, in a way that's still part of that same conversation. The issue is, how do you make sure that who comes into your country is a decision made by your country in the first place, and how do you deport people who have no right to be here? That seems to me where the conversation definitely...
And we've also got the issue of like, people who have rented here legally but are not working. I mean, all the people around me who are begging, I always say, you know, clearly foreign. And I always say, are you here legally? If you're here legally, go and get a job. There's plenty of jobs. If you're not here legally, frankly, F off home. I mean, I say that, just go home. I mean, I always say, I'm calling the police on you now, and they always disappear, take photos of them. There's, you know, I mean, we've got you know, Homeless City that was in Hyde Park in London. Now those people, the police finally decided to move them. They're now all sleeping in Oxford Street, outside the John Lewis store, flagship John Lewis store in Oxford Street, just like rows and rows of them with perfect new white duvets, no doubt all stolen. And you look at these people, I'm going out on a limb. I don't think they're British. They're not war veterans who have fallen on hard times, or youngsters fleeing abusive homes and dealing with drugs, and who we should be absolutely helping every single day and getting them off the streets and helping sort out their lives. Talking about people who've come to this country who would... How do you think they're making money, people? They've not got jobs. They're not claiming benefits, otherwise they'd be given somewhere to live. So you know how they're making money. They're shoplifting. And are they scumbags if they're shoplifting, Tom? That's the question. Because the Prime Minister apparently thinks not, after a shopkeeper put up that sign saying scumbag shoplifters. Basically, if you want to, if you want to get something, I have to go unlock the cabinet for you because of scumbag shoplifters. I think that's a rather generous term.
No, exactly. I mean, it could have been a lot more fruity in the language, and maybe that would have led the police to his door. But the fact that this became an issue for the law to get involved, and also the fact that Keir Starmer, so great at reading the room and sense of where the public are on things like shoplifting and how much of a pox it is, not only on the people who own and run those shops, but also the communities which are blighted by it. To almost take offence at how someone is pushing back against shoplifters is so embarrassing. But again, I think it comes down to Keir Starmer is so kind of tin-eared to where the public
But again, also, like, the police getting angry about people having... I mean, one of my local shops has got pictures of 5 or 6 shoplifters basically saying that these are people who stopped from... here they are shoplifting in our store. Well, probably in breach of GDPR. OK, send the police round. But again, why don't you send the police round when they catch the shoplifters? That might be more useful. I think people are genuinely... Again, an island of strangers. No, an island of scumbags, it turns out. I genuinely think that people have... I mean, we've talked about this quite a few times. People have had enough. I was talking to neighbours the other day about, we need to set up like a meeting with our local councillors about the rubbish that gets strewn in the street, just the heroin, the people shooting up heroin. Live in a nice area. I live in a nice area. We've got people shooting up heroin in doorways, for goodness sake, and a huge number of foreign beggars. I mean, there's one woman. She's been begging for years near us. She's the size of a house. I'm not joking. I mean,
she's doing well for herself.
She's doing
great trade.
Claims not to have a house, but is the size of a house. And she holds this sign up outside the tube station saying, "I am hungry." And every time
believe her.
every time I
You've got
see
an
her,
appetite
I
on it.
burst out laughing. And I said to her, "You've not been hungry, not for a day. You've never been hungry for an hour. You've not been hungry for an hour of your life." I mean, and I mentioned before, I know there's another woman, much older woman, and again, Romanian, I'm pretty sure Romanian, because I've got Romanian in my family, so I recognise some of the things she's, I think, pretty sure. She seems to speak English when I say I'm getting the police, put it that way. And you'll probably all think I'm very heartless, but no, I've seen, these are like the regulars, you know, and she's been able to give a picture of a kid, and this picture must have been taken in 1965, right? And she goes, "Oh, my child," and I said, genuinely, I've lived here 19 years. Your kid, you've probably got great-grandchildren by now. This is not your kid. I mean, this kid is long gone, you know. I mean, they're taking the mick. But what bothers me is they must be doing it knowing that people will give them money. Every time you give money to somebody, especially when they send kids around on public transport and things, every time you give money to these people, you are part of the problem. You're part. If you really care about this, give some money to a homeless charity, give some money to shelter, give some money to the outreach team so they can actually, you know, try and help people who are genuinely in need. Don't give any money to people on the street.
No, absolutely. And I know some people just aren't aware of how much they're often being had in those situations. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. It's something that I think for a lot of people it's more about making them feel good. It's not certainly going to help anyone.
Totally. Haven't gone to the small matter of war in Europe. I've just been told to break, but I want to ask you about Ukraine quickly. Ukraine say we are told from this meeting, well, it's a Zoom meeting between Ukrainian European leaders ahead of the Alaska summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Big worries from the path of European leaders and Zelensky, obviously, that he's just going to give away everything. I mean, bearing in mind, Trump has got his advisor, Steve Witkoff, on this issue. His envoy doesn't even know apparently where Crimea is. He thought it was in the Donbass region. There's basically, it looks like, you know, the concessions could be huge, as in pretty much all the territory Vladimir Putin already has gained, he could get to keep. But that could only happen, surely, if there is a cast-iron guarantee from NATO, from the US, from the Europeans, that any inch more will lead to all-out war between, you know, NATO, US and Russia. I don't even trust that. I wouldn't even trust any commitment like that, though, would you?
No, and I'd be very surprised if that was something that was forthcoming from the Americans because of Trump's kind of NATO scepticism, shall we say, his tendency to be his general kind of outlook, which is that he doesn't want America embroiled in these sorts of wars. And it's just the fact that this is being stitched up almost like between the old great powers with Ukraine not even at the table, I think is a grim reminder of how, in terms of this conflict, they're invaded by Russia. They rely on the support of America necessarily, but all it takes is a change in leadership and a change of weather for that to really fall apart for them. So it's a horrendous situation they found themselves in. It does feel like they've run out of road, both domestically in terms of public support as well as in terms of Britain, international support.
Britain, France and Germany, they talk a good game, but will they actually stump up?
Yeah, the European powers are very good at posting statements, tweets. We stand by Ukraine. I'm sure Putin quakes in his boots every time he sees that. But they can never put their money where their mouth is, partly because our own militaries are in a complete mess.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? Again, the message that's going to go out to Putin is that war does work, and it's only a matter of time for the next one. I think people are living in cloud cuckoo land to think that anything other than total defeat for Putin is the solution to this. 10:23 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and all the topics we have covered, in particular the 50,000 migrant crossings since Keir Starmer came to power. Scumbag shoplifters, Ukraine, you name it. Give us a call and do let us know if you are surviving the heat, because the BBC thinks you probably won't make it to the end of the day. Anyway, this is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, well done for surviving the break in this heat. 10:27 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater still with me. Coming up very soon, we're going to talk to Lord McKinley. First up though, let's get to your calls on various topics we're talking about. 344 499 1000 is the number. Anne is in Gwynedd and wants to have her say. Good morning, Joanne.
Good morning.
I'm sure I've mispronounced where you are. Can you pronounce it for me?
Gwynedd.
Gwynedd. Oh, it's the th instead of the d. Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah.
I said it, I thought that's not right. I don't want you to tell me off afterwards. And what do you want to say, my darling?
Well, Starmer, I can't call him sir. I'm sorry, I've got no respect for him. He's not capable of doing anything, but he will claim what other people's achievement.
Yeah.
And then I listened to Mike this morning, and those 6 load of codswallop that they spoke, and I remembered Churchill's speech before the war, where we will protect our borders.
Yeah.
And nothing's being done.
Yeah.
And these are the people who are governing the country, is taking their winter fuel allowance off their pensioners.
Yeah.
And then it was mentioned about the people who have all the freebies and they're given a credit card. Is it a credit card or a debit card? Because a credit card you've got to pay back, haven't you? A debit card
comes out money you've got. Yeah, these are migrants, but I think these are they're freebie vouchers for things, aren't they, on a card?
I don't know, but as I say, they took the winter fuel allowance from people.
Yeah.
But what they're giving back?
I know it is genuinely so painful, and it's so obviously painful. But also, it's the fact that public servants. So if a charity wants to go and do this, more for you. If a private company wants to go and do it, up to them. Not my business. If it's my money, why are you spending my money on this stuff?
You know, you go out and you see people struggling.
Yep.
The restaurants, the pubs, they're nearly empty.
Yep.
It's a domino effect.
Yep.
And these idiots, how on earth did Starmer get the job?
It is still beyond me.
Got no sense.
Here's the worrying thing. He was one of the better ones on offer for Labour Party.
God help us.
Oh, thank you.
Well, no, before that, before he became Prime Minister, how did he get a job?
Yeah, I know. I think there's a lot of people in that sort of public sector world. He was Director of Public Prosecutions and things like that. And in the human rights barrister world, when you think, oh, come on, he's a barrister, he must be really clever. Yeah, I think he's he's someone who can learn stuff. But you see him, he always reads his statements. He doesn't think on his feet. He's not actually a very sharp thinker. He's certainly not as bright as he thinks he is. And he's certainly not anything like as competent as he thinks he is.
But you can't respect him, can you? Because he lies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure, I am convinced that he wants to be the president of the EU.
Of course.
Well, once they've got everything off him, they're going to drop him like a ton of bricks.
Of course, yeah. I mean, he lives in cloud cuckoo land like they all do. That's what they all need, is a reality check. They're just paying lip service to us. They still absolutely have contempt for us, just in case anyone wonders. They really do. And even the tone of your voice tells me everything, and I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for that. Let's go to Herbie, who's in Harrow. Herbie, you wanted to talk about Ukraine.
Yes, good morning, Julie.
Morning.
Well, this meeting on Friday is a complete and utter waste of time. How can you negotiate with the parties if all the parties aren't involved?
Thank you.
How can you come to an agreement if all parties are not there to negotiate it? OK, they may come to a deal, and if Ukraine decides not to accept it, what are they going to do then?
Yeah. But again, the pressure from the US so far, in actual reality, has all been on Zelensky. And other than there might be economic sanctions on Putin. He talked tough for a couple of weeks, but he's gone soft again.
The problem is Trump's got what he wants. The problem is that most of the materials that I think Zelensky's given Trump is in Russian-held territory. So if Russia becomes part of that territory and he owns it and he comes to an agreement, he's got access to those raw materials that he needs for the money that he spent on weapons that he supplied to Ukraine. Trump and Putin cannot be trusted with anything. Yeah. They are there for their own good, not for the good of the country.
I couldn't agree with you more. And again, look, it's up to the Ukrainian people whether they want to see territory, whether they want to carry on fighting. And Zelensky is not going to be shedding Ukrainian blood for no point whatsoever. But the message that goes out to Vladimir Putin, if he gets to keep all the territory he's got, is, well, come again in a few years' time, which is what he will do.
He will take it over completely. Listen, Russia has invaded a sovereign state, and he's done it illegally. He's invaded. He's the invader. Trump would never give up an ounce or an acre of land in America if somebody invaded
I've
America.
said this to Americans. Which part of your country would you give to Putin if he chose to invade it? Exactly. And the meeting in Alaska. What if Putin decided to take Alaska? Exactly. Oh, they wouldn't give an inch of land, would they? I'm with you all the way on that, Herbie. Thank you so much. If you disagree or if you agree, get in touch. 0344 499 1000. That's the number to call. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to Lord McKinley. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater with me. Get his thoughts on what my next has to say in just a moment. He is Craig, now Lord McKinley, a Conservative peer, and joins us. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia. Good to be back on.
I'm just checking that you are surviving in the heat, because the BBC thinks it's touch and go for most of us.
Well, yeah, let's get some more, red and black on those weather charts, so it frightens us even more. I think most people would say, lovely, it's August, children are off, let's enjoy the good weather.
Yeah, well, like normal people, like what we always did for years until the propaganda started. Yeah, funny that.
Right.
Let's start with, obviously an awful lot of people wanted to come to our shores for our wonderful climate now. That's probably why we've got, we understand as of today, 50,000 plus migrants arriving since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. He smashed the gangs. Hasn't gone quite as well as perhaps he hoped, with a 48% increase, so almost a 50% increase in the number of migrants arriving in our country. What do you make of that figure?
Well, we got lots wrong. We've got too many pull factors, and it was interesting to note the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi, just yesterday said we should perhaps be looking at that accommodation. I mean, what's not to like? Four-star accommodation in the centre of London, 3 square meals a day. No matter how cold it is, you're going to be kept warm. You've got the opportunity of illegal working for one of the delivery companies. Seems to be a very easy touch to get yourself on the back of, and also, because of the activism of our judges, you've got a better chance of getting your application for refugee status approved in the UK than any other European country. Unless we get those things right, it doesn't really matter what we do. So perhaps we should be looking at the quality of the accommodation.
But there was an issue, wasn't there? There's a whole thing about, when it all came out that people were in, these migrants were kept in 4-star hotels. Your lot, when they were in power, said, OK, we'll go down to 3- and 2-star hotels. Now they haven't got enough of those. But the solution is, I mean, even Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, says we're going to get people out of hotels. But they want to get them out of hotels because it's not so obvious to local community. If you put people in houses of multiple occupation, or you put them in flats, they're private contractors like Serco are taking up 5-year leases on property, no longer available for local people. I would say that's even worse than them being in hotels. I would rather know where they were and we can keep a track. And given the spate of criminality we have seen, some alleged, some well proven now, violent sexual assaults, violence, knifings, goodness knows what else, theft and the like. Not saying all of these people are, and there will somewhere among this be some genuine asylum seekers who we do want to help, maybe depending on what they can contribute to this country, because I'm sorry, I don't think we should have an open door policy on that. But at the end of the day, we've got a whole load of people plonked into communities, and people are saying it is largely poor communities, but I don't live in a poor community, and I've got one very, very near me, a hotel that's now been turned into an asylum hotel, and these people are living amongst us near primary schools, and frankly, people have had enough. But is the solution camps? Because I think your lot looked at camps at one point, and the human rights officer lawyers went, "Oh no, you can't put them in a camp. That would be a breach of their human rights."
Well, what I find really bizarre is that we seem to have a different interpretation of the ECHR rules, whatever they are, in the UK compared to the rest of European countries that these people have passed through. That's what I've never understood. Why is the likelihood of getting asylum claim higher in the UK than, say, in Spain? Why is it that we take more notice of the what they call the judge in pyjamas Rule 39, whatever we think of that, in the UK than any other countries? In Germany, they only comply with 60% of those. In Spain, only 40%. The UK, 80%.
Of course,
all meant to be the same backdrop. So, the desirability of the UK should be no more than any other country. So we're doing something wrong. Now I've got an idea. Perhaps the French might allow to be...
Oh, sorry, the line's cutting out a little bit there. Hopefully,
shouting, smash Craig, the gangs on the beaches of France. Maybe that is what is missing.
Craig, you just said you had an idea. Just missed the beginning of that because the line went. You said your idea is what should the French do?
I said, let's have some loudspeakers on the beaches of northern France shouting out Yvette Cooper's voice saying, "We're here to smash the gangs," because they're obviously not listening. But...
I'd love that. Oh, God, I mean, as if that's going to work. But
the latest proposal to have this sort of one in and one out, which we know is completely shambolic. It's in the hands of the French. If you claim that you've got a human rights claim in the UK, you will not be exported. Aha! A loophole emerges, dare I say, and then the French get to choose who they send this way. Yep. Let me guess, it's not going to be the cream of the crop, shall I? Or am I being a little cynical?
Oh, so cynical. Just a call that we just had from Anne, in one of our audience members.
Anne had more common sense than I even know how to tell you this morning.
Well, exactly. But I think a lot of people are saying, it's the level of competence, the incapability. There was a certain arrogance in Labour, wasn't it? Which is like, look, the big problem is, A, they're Tories. B, they're not on good terms with the EU. They can't deal with this or that. And there was this view that sort of once they were in power, everything would be fine. Do you think they've been a little bit shocked by how, being in government's quite hard, and just thinking you're a nice person, which they definitely think of themselves, that you actually don't necessarily get the job done?
Well, a government is tough. I mean, we've made it tough. We've made it perhaps too tough. We have created a labyrinth of rules and regulations. I was reading a piece the other day, very interesting. It was Churchill, just after the war, said if a country has more than 10,000 laws, it becomes ungovernable. We have created 100,000 statutory instruments since the war, and then we wonder why we are looking fairly ungovernable.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at something like the a labyrinthine act that we should never have seen the light of day. I think it was the last phases of that while I was in hospital, so I can sort of claim clean hands on that. Was the Online Safety Act.
Yep.
I mean, how the big players are meant to fathom their way through this. So, on phase one, they're actually closing down a little bit too liberally, as we thought they would, because they're worried about being on the wrong side of the law.
Yeah, so people don't get to see news footage even of things like protests against asylum hotels.
And MPs, and even MPs giving speeches, I'm given to understand. And then they get wrapped on the knuckles for saying, they're being too over-prescriptive of what they're banning. Yeah. So what is this central line that they're meant to be able to...
Yeah, well, maybe they shouldn't ban anything that isn't a criminal act. Maybe.
Well, I mean, that to
or
me
you know,
would
not
seem to be-
deliberately inciting crime as opposed to reporting crime. I mean, maybe they could do that. I mean, that's
I mean,
the...
good old common law served this country very well for a very long time. It's actually serving a lot of this world very well, particularly the rise of the UAE and Dubai is because they're based on common law. It's very understandable. You know if something's dangerous. You know if something is nasty.
Yeah.
Trying to put that in words becomes very difficult. But because of 50 years of EU membership, we got rather used to having laws which actually had to be written down to understand common sense. We don't need that.
No, exactly. Well, here's an issue of common sense here then. We've got a shopkeeper, Rob Davies, running the Run Ragged Vintage Shop in Wrexham in North Wales. He puts a notice up in the window telling shoppers some cabinets were locked against theft. And he basically said because of scumbag shoplifters. Apparently, the police turned up and said, oh, don't think you should have a sign there saying they're scumbag shoplifters. Then they later clarified, once it became publicised, that actually perfectly legal for him to go. It's his right to have that opinion of calling them scumbags. I mean, they can always sue for libel, can't they? I'm not sure they'd win it. But Sir Keir Starmer's press office was asked yesterday whether he would call shoplifters scumbags, and apparently he would not. Would you call shoplifters scumbags?
I'd call them scumbags and worse. Yes, this is modern parlance for perfectly understandable what we think of people who are just stealing from other people. It's normal parlance, and to think that the police even thought it worthwhile to visit, quite frankly, I think speaks volumes about...
Perhaps if they bothered to visit when there was a scumbag shoplifter in the shop, then we wouldn't have such a problem.
Well, you're absolutely right. Now, I mean, there's lots of things in this space. The whole issue of non-crime hating incidents where people are getting knocked on the door for exercising their free will as they should be allowed to. I mean, this is a descent into a chaotic Britain. And I have been asking myself for some time, where are the police when we need them? And I'm afraid they leave a little time for anything else. But there was something very similar came out just yesterday, and this was the Information Commissioner's Office.
Yeah.
You know, the office that should be able to interpret data and how it should be used, pictures and everything else. Now, they're saying it may not be appropriate to put photos up of people who have been shoplifting in shops. Now, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It might be appropriate sometimes. It might not be appropriate other times. They've used a weasel word of get out, may not be appropriate.
Yeah.
Now, if they can't understand the law applying to data, then what chance the rest of us?
Yeah.
So I'm afraid that is another factor of the world we're living in. Nobody seems to want to actually interpret the law.
Exactly. And if the law was actually enforced, then people wouldn't feel the need to do that. I'm going to have to leave it there.
Too much law.
Yeah, well, too much. No, I don't mind us having law as long as we enforce them. But we enforce the wrong ones, like that. Craig McKinney, Lord McKinney, thank you so much for joining us for a lovely tree-lined background there. A Conservative peer, of course, former Tory MP. Tom Slater, come back in on any of you want to come back in on any of those topics?
No, I think one of those points about the question of law and the question of the way in which it can be wielded against people quite tyrannically. It's often not even what is in the legislation itself. I mean, one thing, if you look at all of these cases of the police showing up to intimidate, whether it's a shopkeeper for calling people scumbags or whether it's, parents for complaining to their school, the thing you see time and time again is that they've actually not committed any crime. They haven't actually fallen foul of any of the many tens of thousands of laws.
Or misgendering someone by correctly using the right pronouns.
No, absolutely. There's been cases of people being dragged through the courts, even getting to the point of conviction. In the case, there was a woman called Kate Scotto a few years ago. It's not a crime to misgender someone, but it was effectively kind of cooked up on...
Using correct grammar isn't a crime.
And it ends up having to be overturned at appeal. But this is the problem, is that maybe when the law is such a kind of thicket, when there's so much of it, when it's so vague and broadly defined, it can be wielded
there is a
against
problem.
people.
Things like non-crime hate incidents, they're not in the courts, and there's 60 people a day questioned by police about those. I think the problem is the police and the police chiefs, and the whole justice system, which has just gone completely mad woke and is more, again, like with the migrant issue, more concerned about people knowing about or talking about migrants in hotels than the fact that these people are in hotels, already crimes that may or may not have been committed by people in those hotels. They're always at the wrong end of it. Like, why are you angry? If a shopkeeper is having to put a sign up about scumbag shoplifters and having to put stuff away behind locked cabinets, the solution to that is not take the photos down or whatever, or tell him not to say scumbag shoplifters. The solution is stop the shoplifting. I mean, we're always tackling the wrong end of the problem, and I think that's where people have gone, we're done now, we've had enough, we want some zero tolerance. And we don't, if there's going to be a load of laws, can we at least enforce the ones that we really care about? Things like, theft and things like that. That's what people care about, isn't it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Up next, we are going to talk about Ukraine with former British Army Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, a very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It is 10:50. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about Ukraine, and in particular that Alaska summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin on Friday. It was a small matter of the one Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, not being invited to that meeting, where they apparently are going to decide possibly on a peace deal. But can you have a peace deal over a country where the leader of that country is not even in the talks? Well, let's talk about that with Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, OBE. He's a former British Army Colonel and joins us now. Very good morning to you, Hamish.
Good morning,
Thanks
Julia.
for joining us. I mean, you've been very supportive over, our support for Ukraine over recent years since that invasion in February 22. It does look like Donald Trump, he says he wants peace. He thought he could get peace within 24 hours of getting into office in January. That's not happened. How concerned are you, or how hopeful are you that we could see a peace deal that the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian president could live with on Friday?
Well, that is a heck of a question there, Julia. I think, first of all, it's good that they're meeting at least. I personally would like to be there and arrest Putin myself for the war crimes he's been indicted for and those yet to come. But that is
Which is, of course, why he can't come to Europe, yes.
Entirely, and having the negotiations about as far away as Ukraine as you can get on the planet, and without Zelensky, or a representative at least from Ukraine, does seem to be absolutely bonkers. And we know that Putin hasn't changed his maximalist approach. He wants to subjugate the whole of Ukraine. He keeps saying that, always has done. But at least they're talking, and Trump seems to be having very much taken the Russian side until the last few months, seems to be at least agreeing that the Ukrainians do have a peace here. But you're absolutely right. Is it going to be a just deal? I'm not sure it will be, and it can't be without Zelensky. I know that he's suggesting that he might cede some territory to the Russians, but it's very different from what the Russians want. So,
well, indeed, the Russians want the whole of Ukraine. I mean, again, Vladimir Putin believes that Ukraine is Russian. End of, nothing to discuss. But it's interesting. Donald Trump seemed to be getting much more hardline with Putin in the last couple of months. There was some hope that, he's finally woken up to the fact that he's being played by Vladimir Putin, and frankly, looking like a chump on the world stage, which is what he has been looking like over this issue. He's my friend, he's a good guy. No, he's not. He's not either of those things. But it looked like it was a warming of relationships with Zelensky. But then yesterday again, he heaped praise on Putin when he confirmed that Zelensky would not be invited to the Alaska meeting. But there's the big concern, isn't it? What they're going to be discussing and what's going to happen. And we've seen some years ago, was it 2018, where they met up, and they met for something like an hour and a half on their own, no one else in the room, big question marks about what was said, totally unprecedented for world leaders to be in that scenario. And the reality of just that, he wants peace pretty much at any cost to the Ukrainians. But is Donald Trump, if he did say, like, OK, we're going to agree, you get Crimea, you get the Donbass region, where you are right now, we freeze the lines de facto, full stop. Is Donald Trump in a position to do that deal if Ukraine says, no, we want to keep on fighting, and or the European leaders are willing to actually stump up the military might for them to do that?
Well, I think that's what we've got to find out on Friday. No deal is better than a bad deal, I think, in this case. And I don't want to repeat sort of discussions that others have had here, but absolutely. Zelensky has suggested that they could freeze the lines at the moment. But that is when Steve Witkoff went to meet Putin last week, bizarrely without an interpreter, relying on the Russians to interpret him. He got completely the wrong end of the stick and thought that the Russians were going to concede all these oblasts, which absolutely they were not. So the chance of a deal, and I really think, there is a possibility that that Trump may walk away from this, and Europe must step up. And it's obvious that it is far more important to us, peace in Europe and peace in Ukraine, than it is to Trump and the Americans.
And that's fair enough. And again, it seems to me to be perfectly reasonable. We should be helping to fund our own security in Europe. But the question is how strong is Europe going to be? Now, I'm being very encouraged by Friedrich Merz, the new German Chancellor, in stepping up on this. We know, countries like Poland, they get it. They've got a Russian border as well. Certainly the tiny Baltic states. But again, they know they're next on the list, but they don't really have the sort of the money, the firepower. You need to have the big European nations to do that. But the key thing is, if there were a deal of any sort, it would realistically be just a de facto. It wouldn't be this has to be, I believe, a constitutional vote for the Ukrainian people to cede any territory of Ukraine. Zelensky's, it's not in his privilege or right to do. But realistically, any freezing of the lines now would be meaningless without a guarantee from America, from Europe, that there and no further, not one steel cap boot going over. But given that we offered a guarantee when Ukraine gave back their nuclear weapons to Russia all those years ago, and America and Britain signed up to that, along with Russia, ironically, we've already given up on that because we should have come to Ukraine's aid much more surely than that. And I'm not sure if I were Ukrainian, I would trust any pledge from the West now.
Well, Julia, I think we've eventually woken up. All you said is absolutely right. The Budapest Memorandum is meaningless, and we should have realised that. But we paid lip service to our defence in Europe since the end of the Cold War. We've now woken up. I personally believe, Frederick Merz and the Germans and the Poles and the Scandinavian states, they are building up their military. So I think we do have the military power to enforce a peace if it comes to that. But I think we also need to consider actually going in with the Ukrainians if they can't come to a peace deal, because Putin's not going to stop fighting.
Are you talking about putting British boots on the ground?
I'm potentially talking about European military, including Britain, supporting Ukraine against Russia.
So fighting Russians, or saying we will police your borders and we will be there.
Police. I'm thinking more of providing no-fly zones so the Russians can't attack civilian targets in places like Kyiv and Lviv and elsewhere. And if Putin can't do that, that's what he does. He attacks civilian targets, as he did in Syria. If he can't do that, he is going to go backwards. So I think we need to look at all prospects, but let's hope that Trump does come good on Friday. But if he doesn't, we've got to be prepared to go all in to support Ukraine, because war in Europe, a wider war in Europe, is something that nobody wants.
Indeed. Hamish de Bretton Gordon, former British Army Colonel, thank you so much. Tom Slater, your thoughts on that? Because a lot of people say, look, it's not our problem. It's far away. I mean, where is Ukraine? It's not a problem. It's their war. But this is someone who's, he's not an armchair general like me. He's been in the battles himself and says, we need to be backing Ukraine.
And I think the question is, what does backing Ukraine look like? Because I don't think there's any appetite in this country or many other Western countries for boots on the ground, for no-fly zones, which means shooting down Russian planes, potentially engaging directly with a nuclear
would the Russians would risk that? I mean, at the end of the day, Putin's very wily. Would he risk that?
I think that's a gamble that most people would not willing to take.
Without an American guarantee.
But at the same time, I think sometimes this argument sometimes gets polarised between Trump being like, it's none of our business, we should just pull out next Tuesday, we should not have any kind of support whatsoever, or the people around Trump at the very least. And then you've got the only option is to kind of again have European, even NATO more broadly, boots on the ground. I think the pathway that is probably going to be pursued here, and is probably the one that is most likely to succeed, is what some of the European leaders talk about as the kind of steel porcupine. What you need to do is feed so much weaponry and infrastructure and agreements with Ukraine so they can build up their own defence and genuinely defend their own national sovereignty. That's something.
Well, they've done a magnificent job so far, given the might of the Russian war machine.
Absolutely, and they've developed so quickly. But essentially, you have those kind of supply lines. You have that existing.
But then you're leaving a war ongoing. And again, people who are professed to be so concerned about what's happening in Gaza seem remarkably unbothered about Ukrainian children being killed.
No, absolutely. But I think, as with every respective nation across the kind of pro-Ukraine alliance, they've also got their own citizens to be concerned about.
Yeah.
So broadening into direct conflict.
If it was me,
not going to be willing to
and I'll be called a warmonger, I think we should all the rest of it. Even if America won't do it, we all rest of everyone else in NATO simply say to Russia, OK, you can, I personally wouldn't see that much territory. That's it. We take you on one steel cap. We will be at war with you, and we are not afraid of war. The trouble is, we are afraid of war, and that's why Putin will keep testing us. But he's going to keep testing us, and he's going to keep invading his neighbours until we are willing to go to war. We are in 1930s territory, and until people wake up and smell the coffee on that one, this is going to keep happening. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. You may well disagree, you may agree. 0344 499 1000. Love to hear your thoughts as well on the 50,000 migrants crossing the channel. Well done, Keir Starmer. What another great target met. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Lots more coming up. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Radio, DAB Plus Radio, or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's lovely to have you join us today on this sweltering hot day, which I say we're just all trying to survive, according to the BBC. Somehow, well, let's hope some of us make it through to continue the human race. Just 30 odd degrees. I mean, goodness knows, who knows whether we'll make it or not. Anyway, if you do make it and you've not managed to see all of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe and you'll never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, I'm going to be talking more about that. 50,000 illegal migrants total. They will have, that's the number of people who've crossed the channel in small boats since Keir Starmer took office in July last year. That is what the latest Home Office official figures is set to say today, after we'd already hit a number which meant, well, an extra 430 migrants travelling from France on Monday means we're already topped that number. It means the most astonishing stat. There is one illegal migrant arriving on our shores every 11 minutes. Every 11 minutes. We're also going to be talking about Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader. She suggested that those new arrivals, in fact, all the people who are already here, the massive backlog in the tens of thousands, shouldn't be in asylum hotels or indeed in local housing. They should actually be put into camps. I'm all for that. I think that would have a massive deterrent effect. And they'd have to not be very nice camps, by the way. Plus, Keir Starmer's office says he would not call shoplifters scumbags. Downing Street said this comes after police officers have told a shopkeeper in Wrexham in Wales to take down a sign in which he calls shoplifters scumbags. They later had to clarify the law, pointing out that actually the sign was not illegal. So why on earth did police bother turning up for that, but not bother turning up when he had shoplifters, you know, the scumbags causing the original problem? Isn't this the actual heart of the matter in our country right now, that the police only seem to get involved with the wrong stuff and not the stuff we really care about? Plus, London Mayor Sadiq Khan has been accused of gaslighting the capital. We call it lying. That's what it really is. After he shared selected statistics showing a fall in knife crime and burglary in the capital in the first 3 months of the year. The fact that a number of other crimes have risen sharply, he chose not to mention. Does he think we're all stupid and we won't notice? Plus, NHS staff are facing what the Royal College of Nurses calls utterly abhorrent levels of violence in A&E. One worker attacked every 2 hours on average, according to new figures. Patients and their families are being driven to rage by the long waits and dehumanising care in corridors, says the RCN. Well, we'll talk about all of that in this hour as well. Joining me for all the chat, of course, you, I hope. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000 to have to say. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. But also joining me in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Morning once again to you. Again, still surviving the heat. Well done. 1 hour done. Well done, everybody. Let's talk more about these migrants arriving. These figures are astonishing. 50,000 is going to hit today. It'll top 50,000 today on the official stats. Arriving, and that's one every 11 minutes since Keir Starmer announced he was going to, smash the gangs. Do you have any, this is a weird question, do you have any sympathy for Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, the fact that the numbers have gone up by 48%, so nearly 50% since they said they would deal with this issue, and they were going to, talk to Macron, the EU, and do deals. They got rid of Rwanda deal. They were going to, border control, border security, tackling the source. Do you have any sympathy for them?
No.
Okay, there we go.
I think we all knew that this was going to happen. I think deep down that they knew that this was going to happen. They made it very clear that in terms of their approach to tackling this problem was a kind of mix of process, striking a few deals around the edges. Could they have really believed that this was going to drastically reduce the numbers, let alone properly get on top of this issue of illegal migration? I don't think they do.
They appointed a new border controls czar, border security czar.
No, exactly, and we've talked about nothing else since.
Done it?
It's obviously put the fear of God into those people traffickers. I'm sure they wake up every day in a cold sweat thinking about Yvette Cooper and some bloke with some epilepsy.
They wake up every day in a cold sweat as they roll around in their €500 notes.
Quite.
In their five-star hotels.
And it's been, and this government has been very good business for them. That has certainly seemed to be the case. I think deep down, and you've talked about this many times, it's not clear they actually want to solve this problem. That's certainly not the impression you get from the policies they're pursuing.
So they're both unable and unwilling.
I think they want to manage it. I think they would love it if they could show that it had measurably reduced by a certain amount. But I think actually properly managing your own borders is something that they're constitutionally
they don't really believe
incapable
in.
of doing.
I'll tell you, I've interviewed a vetkeeper years back, and I remember asking, so how many should we allow in? Well, can't put a number on it. Well, you can put a number on it. Is it 10,000? Is it 100,000? Is it 200,000? Is it 1 million? Is it 10 million? I mean, give us a number, because there's a few billion people who want to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Personally, I'd stay in France. I love Britain, but for the weather.
No, exactly.
I'd stay in France.
You'd be on a dinghy in the other direction.
The weather and the wine, I'd stay in France. No, but that's the thing. But isn't this exactly the same as how they want to deal with things like the shoplifting and indeed the protests about, stop people talking about it online, criminalise people for, putting up pictures of the shoplifters in their store, or calling them, or sending the police around if they call them scumbags, doing all of that and not actually tackling the real problem. Even we're going to get people out of their hotels because we're going to put them into houses and flats, and no one will sodding well know we won't be able to track them down, so everyone will stop talking about it. Or we're going to basically go as quickly as we can through the backlog of people. Too many people we go onto asylum, and we're told all these people were genuine. Yeah, but these people have already been rejected for asylum in Germany and elsewhere, and we know the number of the people who get to stay here, some of the cases, and they're just tip of the iceberg cases, the people who'd be allowed to stay. If you and I were in charge of that tribunal, they wouldn't be allowed to stay. It's insane. And you're a bleeding heart lefty in your heart of hearts, aren't you? Come on. You've just come round to sanity.
No, well, I think this particular issue is a matter of common sense as much as anything else. That you cannot have a situation in which illegal migration is just being facilitated by your own asylum system, and you cannot even deport someone if they come to the country illegally, rack up a series of charges while they are here, but still are granted asylum.
Then you have no meaningful control of your country's borders.
No, exactly.
But here's the thing. So the solution, when they're going to go through this backlog, and they're going to clear a load of the backlog, and they're going to clear a load of the backlog by basically granting indefinite leave to remain. They won't necessarily get asylum, but they'll be allowed to stay here to get off the list. And then they'll say they've solved the problem. But the problem will still be here, because there will still be a load of people here who came here illegally who we don't want to be here, who are not contributing. And no, they're not all engineers and astronauts. Yeah. So this is the thing. So they always... And I think the Tories did this a lot as well. There's this idea that you solve like the outside of the problem. It's like, if you've got like a completely burnt out derelict house, well, just put up a nice facade and then people can't see it, so it's okay. No, the problem is the burnt out derelict house.
No, absolutely.
You need to repair the house.
Absolutely. And to lean into my bleeding heart left-wing views on this for a second, I think, and if the government are really concerned about the asylum issue rather than just using it as a virtue signal, you are going to completely destroy any public support whatsoever for legitimate asylum routes, defined asylum routes, Ukraine, Hong Kong, etc., the ones that have had overwhelming public support, even though a lot of people came to this country under those schemes. People are going to start to get sceptical about the whole thing, because it's come to be a byword.
Polls are very, very clear now. People are saying, shut the borders, full stop, shut the borders.
And that's in response to this chaos.
Even to economic migrants, even to people who are legitimate, to say, no, we're done now. We're done. We're full.
And we're full. And this is precisely the successive governments reaping what they sowed on migration, by saying one thing and doing another, by completely losing control, by trying to do one thing and it having the reverse effect.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a complete mess, which will in the end make the even a kind of reasonable, humane case for something like asylum schemes a lot harder to make, and for understandable reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, she was down at Epping talking to people upset about the Bell Hotel used as an asylum hotel. That's where these sort of protests first kicked off. She suggested housing asylum seekers in camps instead of hotels. Is that the answer? I mean, it seems to me to be a good part of the answer. Get them out of our local neighbourhoods and put them somewhere where life's not that great. You can't earn money. You're sitting in a camp for a couple of years.
I mean, it's one of those things where even that becomes sort of like moving the problem around. It's like when they kind of, moored up the Bibby Stockholm down in the southwest. It's still...
But they were free to come and go, Bibby Stockholm.
But it's one of those things where even that becomes a problem in the local community. So it's the sort of thing where I think we've got to deal with these problems at source. Of course, there is a question about where you house people. The hotels thing is completely run out of road. But people are already onto the HMOs and flat blocks being turned over. It's one of those things where I don't think there's almost any town or city in the UK now where you could have a council or the government or the Home Office attempt to requisition a property or attempt to take over a hotel for these purposes without there being almost instant backlash and protest.
Well, certainly in my local
It's
area, I mean, we had
untenable.
local hotels closed, after lockdown. They hadn't got any business, and then it was closed for a refurbishment, and then they reopened briefly, and then oh no, gone. And it's like they keep saying we're not open. Well, I see people going in and out. You're definitely open. And then when you go along, you realise, oh yeah, no, it's an Asylum hotel. But again, no one in the local. I've not seen anything in the local paper. Nothing. No one was told about it.
Yeah,
like, it's none of our business. None of our business.
The secrecy, I think, makes people even more furious. They're not even being told, let alone
Well, exactly.
asked.
Yeah, then people find out when they discover that there have been allegations made, and we've got of serious rape of a 12-year-old girl, and allegedly by some asylum seekers in Epping. I mean, no wonder people are concerned. Let's also talk about the latest jobs figures. Unemployment figures came out today, and showing a fall in job vacancies. Not by much, but basically, it is not looking good on the economic front. Interestingly, wages have gone up by more in the public sector than the private sector. Pay growth, including bonuses, dropped from 5% to 4.6% in the same period. But it's higher for those in the public sector than in the private sector. Now, given that in the public sector, they have seen zero increase in productivity, but they're getting higher pay rises than those in the private sector. I'm not sure that's going to work out well, but also some stats out from the Office for National Statistics at the Department of Work and Pensions, his latest stats out a couple of hours ago, showing that more than 1 million migrants are claiming universal credit in Britain. The majority are unemployed, because universal credit is a benefit you can claim whilst working. Largely people aren't doing it, and by the way, if you are working on universal credit, you're working 1 or 2 days a week. But new data reveals the July 2025 figure is the highest since universal credit was launched in 2013. It's just a record 8 million people are now on universal credit. Nearly half not expected to work. There's no requirement on them to even seek work, and more than 1 million of those are migrants. I mean, sorry, these are shocking figures.
No, absolutely, and it just across the whole gamut of what this government tried to demonstrate competence on, it's made things obviously worse. I mean, you have the Chancellor constantly trying to talk about, you can trust us with public spending, we're going to be responsible, we're not going to let it run out. First thing she does is she issues these pay rises, which naturally lead to people wanting to come back for more. That's within their interest to do so, but again, there's a two-way street here. The economy, again, we're growth. We've got a laser-like focus on growth. We've posted basically none. You've got the jobs tax brought in by the hike in national insurance. That is already bearing fruit. And then, of course, you've got another reminder of how if you lose control of the migration issue, but also what rights and benefits they're able to access when they arrive, again, it's going to further inflame it, because people think of the welfare system as something which is contributory, something which is not, you don't automatically earn for the first second you step off, because we wouldn't expect that in any other country. So that's one of these things about the migration issue. It grates against people's sense of fairness as much as anything
And we
else.
talked about this. This is a really big British trait, this. And that's it. Most people who even pay in all their lives don't actually cover the costs of their benefits that they do get, whether unemployment or even pensions, actually. But that's a matter of British people. We've made a system. But if you're told again and again and again that we desperately need more migrants and that they're an economic benefit to this country, why is anyone claiming benefits? You can say, oh, well, if someone's worked for 15 years and then they've lost their job, they're entitled to benefits for a couple of months while they look for a new job. Yeah, I've not got an issue with that. That's not what's happening. No. That is not what's happening. But also, why are we needing to import labour if we've got 8 million people on universal credit? And again, some of those people won't be able to work. A lot of them would be able to work. And frankly, if they weren't able to claim some benefits while working part-time, they'd be working full-time.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's another huge issue, which is a hangover from the last Tory government, but still something which Labour are not interested in dealing with. Is part of the reason that you've had successive Tory governments, now Labour, continuing to use the lever of migration, because there's so many people who just aren't working, who could work. We all know this. People have been put out to pasture, whole towns, multiple generations.
Isn't it like something 40% of people in Birmingham of working age are claiming some sort of benefit?
There are so many shocking statistics.
But what on earth's going on?
And it's a moral horror show. This is not good for those communities. It's not good for those individuals. We all know this, and it's clearly having perverse effects in relation to the labour market, migration, whatever. But there's just no one who seemingly has any idea or the kind of seriousness necessary.
Well, again, the people who make the decisions and the people who are in power on this stuff, whether it's civil servants or whether it's, the politicians and their special advisors, the 25-year-olds, no offence, 25-year-olds, but, they're not living in the same world as this. They're not impacted by any of this. It's not their jobs that are being taken. It's not that they're not competing for the same school places for their kids or for the same housing, whether it's council housing or anything. They're not competing for the minimum wage. They're just not having to deal with the same issues. So that it's just not an issue. Again, care workers don't get paid very much. Well, you know what? I mean, we ported, hundreds of thousands of people to work in the care industry. We've still got a massive shortage. So how does that work? But also, wages aren't going to go up in the care working profession unless or until employers have to pay that wage because they can't get people otherwise.
No, exactly. And it's one of those things where, because you have governments who would rather treat symptoms rather than causes, or manage the PR of a particular issue, stop people talking about it, try and improve the optics by tinkering around the edges.
And that's the thing, isn't it?
We've got so many very deep structural problems as a society now. That will no longer do. And I think that's the impatience people are having with this government. It's like, we all know they don't have the answers. And you suspect they know as well.
Yes, I do suspect that they know. I think they've been a little bit overwhelmed by quite how hard governing is. I mean, I would have guessed it was. But I genuinely, I'm thinking, next time round, whoever's in power, I think we've got our fingers crossed for certain parties, whether or not they'd even be able to take this on. I could certainly see a point where I would just say, I will quit doing this. I will quit yapping on about it to actually try and do something about it. And I would be willing to take on the job of somebody, whether it was the migrants issue at the border. And I don't care if everyone hates me on the, I can't go to the right dinner parties. I don't want to go, they're boring anyway. But I just think you need people who are willing to take the hit, who are willing to not just talk tough, but be tough and take the hit. And when they have some bleeding heart story on the front page of the BBC website, they don't back down and they stand by their guns and they do the right thing for this country. And I just think we're going to need somebody who's incredibly strong, incredibly brilliant, who's got the oomph for it. But so much about this is having the gut instincts, but also having the will. Having the will. And again, a lot of people putting their faith in Nigel Farage, a lot of people on the further right from him criticising him as being too moderate now. But again, you get elected in the centre ground. The question is, people talk about where is the centre ground. The Rory Stewarts and the Alistair Campbell think the centre ground is basically a Lib Dem in Taunton. I mean, I'm sorry, they're just completely in cloud cuckoo land about where the centre ground is. Centre ground of this country wants borders closed and migrants out, and scumbag shoplifters arrested and put in jail. And I mean, we are the centre ground, guys. We are the centre ground. But we need somebody who's got the... You've got to take on the whole of the blob. You've got to take on the teachers. You've got to take on the civil servants, every single trade union. You've got to take on the doctors. You've got to take everyone on, and you've got to have the stamp of authority. Do we have anyone who can do that?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? It's certainly the question that's hovering over Nigel Farage, who's obviously a tremendous campaigner, very popular, someone who can really set the political weather.
And has been right about everything.
And there are questions about, and I think there's also kind of question about, there's Farage himself, but also there's reform in general. Can it attract the kind of people who can really, produce policy, govern? Because at the moment, and this is not a criticism of them per se, they're still brand new, essentially. And the fact that they're in this position is staggering and historic in any case, but can they become a real sort of hub for people who are not only going to be prospective parliamentary candidates or people who are going to go on the media for them, but people who are doing the kind of unsung work, the kind of behind closed doors work, the kind of getting together a team that's ready to do exactly as you say, which is to really kind of take on the various vested interests that would obviously present themselves and try to block reform imposing its policies. The jury's still out on that one, but nevertheless I think if they want to not only do well in opinion polls, maybe get a lot of MPs, maybe even win the next election, do they actually want to change the country? That's precisely the sort of thing that you would expect them to be doing at this point.
And would they have the mandate for it? That would be the interesting thing. Can we just talk also just briefly about water shortfall? Apparently the water shortfall has been declared as nationally significant. There's an amber heat health alert that is set to strike. We haven't got a heat wave yet. We need 3 days of, I think, 28 degrees in the south and 25 in the north before there to be a heat wave. I mean, it's hot, it's lovely. People are going to the beach, having a nice time. People are sitting in their gardens who can. A lot of people on a holiday with the kids, having a lovely time. It used to be something we'd celebrate. Yay, we finally finally got summer. Genuinely, I can imagine all of the papers, BBC and everyone in town going, yay, heatwave, it's wonderful. But now it's, we're all going to die, we're all going to die. And then going on and on about, we've got this shortage of water. I tell you what, we've spent a lot of time and effort on our lawn. I'm not getting into a hosepipe ban. Report me, I don't care. But again, it's this thing that we've got a water shortfall. We've got water short because we haven't built enough reservoirs, and we've got 10 million more people in the country, and we've got a whole load of, people have got power showers. People used to have a little dribbly little thing in the corner. Now people have got a power shower. People, they use water for more, for a lot of the, electronics and things as cooling agents and things. I mean, we're surrounded by water. We have rain half of the year, for goodness sake. For the love of God, we've got enough water. This is just bad water management. There's not an issue, but they make it an issue and then tell us we have to conserve water and, or have a shorter shower. Sod off. I'll have as long a sodding shower as I sodding well want, and I will hosepipe my sodding lawn whenever I sodding well want with water that I pay for. And if you can't provide enough water, sod off and do another job. I'm done with it. I'm just done with it.
And the goal of then trying to push it back on the customer, on the
we've got too many emails.
Have
you seen the emails? Apparently, if we've deleted our old emails, they're all in the cloud, and they're being and the cloud involves an awful lot of energy, and there's water cooling. So now because I don't purge my inbox, I'm responsible for the lack of reservoirs in this country.
It's absolutely, and we all know this. We all know that they haven't built the infrastructure. There hasn't been the investment. The water companies are a complete joke, and a bad joke. It's like an insult to us. The fact that,
I'd say borderline criminal. Some
this
of them.
is the most straightforward, this is the most straightforward transaction in that you could possibly imagine. We are surrounded by water. There's plenty of water about. We need it. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to run out.
There's no shortage. It's going to carry on raining.
They cannot provide it at a kind of reasonable level. And then when you again find that those cracks are starting to show, they tell you off. It's ridiculous.
totally. If only we would stop living like we live in the 21st century. I mean, seriously, it is absolutely mad, but very symptomatic of how our country is run, though. As you say, very symptomatic. Love to hear your thoughts on all of those topics. Lots of calls coming in on migration. You want to talk about anything else? I've been talking about Ukraine. I've been talking about scumbag shoplifters. Those latest figures, a record 8 million people now claiming universal credit, almost half not even expected to find work. And 1 million of those are migrants. Remember, they're an economic benefit to us while claiming benefits. Really? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Also, of course, calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. We'll get your calls up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
It makes me very worried about the direction that we're going to take, because they all charge around in ever-decreasing circles. They're not in touch with reality. They pick up whatever sort of rubbish concept was last talked about, whether it's climate change, whether it's DEI, whatever nonsense is being peddled at any one time, usually which involves virtue signalling, they pick it up. And they're driving a lot of this unnecessary legislation, which is complicating and damaging.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 11:27 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's get straight to your calls. Paul is on the line. He's in Somerset. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. What do you surviving the heat somehow? Don't know how. What do you want to say, my love?
Basically, it's regarding reducing the pull factor for the migrants. My view is that they forego, if they enter the country, they forego any right for any form of processing. Okay, you've given that up, and I would also include those that are currently in hotels with this, if it's possible. They go to a camp, and that's where they live, and that's where they stay, and they stay there. They never leave until they reach the point where they go, please, can you fly me somewhere else?
Yes.
Can you send me home?
And then we can pay for their flight,
They never get into society, ever.
Yeah, I think, but again, that itself would be a deterrent. But my recollection is there was a whole thing where that people were being detained, and then there was a whole big thing about, well, there was some, some people got injured, or there were some mothers and children. That's always, you could create difficulty. But again, well, we can try and process those cases quicker. I don't know. But basically, there was a whole human rights thing where you can't keep these people for weeks or months on end in these camps. It's inhumane.
Yeah, but I mean, I had a disagreement with a friend of mine because the first thing he said to me was, oh, what about the women and children? And I said, right, well, and this is something I know you've alluded to before. If a mother makes a choice to get in that boat, which I know you think they should be prosecuted for, and I agree, if a mother makes that life choice for her child and herself, say, right, I'm going there, and I know I'm going to a camp, and I'll never be set out unless I go somewhere else. That's their choice. I'm not responsible for that. And I might sound hard and cold, but something very drastic and serious has to happen. And it's a bit Trump-esque, but
but also you committed a crime, and again we don't. I mean, again, I don't like all this sort of like, oh, your mum shouldn't be put in prison, which depends what crime you've committed. But we separate mums from their children in those scenarios, and again, it's their choice at that point to do that.
Absolutely.
And you can either have your child with you, or your child can be taken into foster care or whatever. But sorry, you've made. I think we're going to have to be harsh, because at the end of the day, I think the duty of care is to British people and not to these people anymore. I think we're done now, aren't we?
100%. And the feeling amongst all my peers and everything is this simmering enough is enough.
Yeah,
it really is reaching breaking
And
point.
interesting, I've noticed it among people who've always been very sympathetic on that issue. They've changed their tune now, which is very interesting. Paul, thank you very much indeed for that. Daniel is in Epsom. Very good morning to you, Daniel.
Hello, Julia. How are you, love?
Very well, my darling. What do you want to say?
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen, okay? These protests are going to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
We've seen in the news that the public are taking the law into their own hands because law and order is on the wane and societal breakdown is here. The next step and the next thing I think that should happen is a wealthy benefactor with boats gets volunteers and the British people stop the boats. We don't want them here. It would cause a diplomatic incident. If the government won't do what we've asked them to do, then the people have a right to protect our own borders and to protect our own streets and to protest until we get out.
Oh, 100% the protests. I'm all in favour as long as they stay peaceful. I still think you get more done with peaceful protests. I really do. We need to obey the law. But you say.
You got to be. I don't think you do. We've gone far too far the line now. We've got to do something. If the government won't stop these boats, right, and they keep giving these invaders who we don't want here our money, right? We don't want it. So we have a right to get a wealthy benefactor with boats, and there'll be thousands of volunteers, get in the channel and stop them ourselves.
No, I hate to tell you, you're into maritime law there. You end up having a risk to life of anybody. You're in different territory.
Yeah, but not to most of us. That's not how we think. We've given them long enough now to get their act together.
I completely agree with you on that. I think the protests are going to have to get a lot bigger. I think we are going to need hundreds and hundreds of people outside hotels. Again, peacefully. 100% it's going to be peaceful. But I think people are, and again, most people are completely unaware of whether a asylum. Like I had no idea there was an asylum hotel near me using up I found out because a friend of mine, a neighbour in the area, had called up to try and book a room at the hotel for a family member, and that's why. And That's a facility that's gone in our area, and it's been there about 2 years. We have seen a noticeable increase in crime in that area. Is that related? I don't know, but I'd like to be told if it is.
The whole place is going to rack and ruin, Julia. And unless someone does, and we can't wait 3.5, 4 years for reform to get in there. It'll be like a third world nation by then. Something needs to be done, and like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you on that, Daniel. Thank you for that. Well, look, I'll put some of that actually to my next guest. He's coming up in just a few moments. Harry Miller is a former police officer, and We Are Fair Cop is one of the organisations he's a part of. We'll talk to him particularly about scumbag shoplifters. Oh no, they're not scumbags, says the Prime Minister. Sadiq Khan giving some very questionable statistics on crime and indeed vigilante tube passengers who could now face arrest after a naked man was, well, beaten up on the tube. But were they in the right or in the wrong? We'll talk about that. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:35 is the time. Let's talk about lawless Britain right now, because it certainly feels like it is, doesn't it? Harry Miller is a former police officer, part of We Are Fair Cop, and joins us now. Founder of Fair Cop. We Are Fair Cop is the Twitter handle. Very good morning to you, Harry.
Lovely to speak to you, Julia, as always.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. There's so much to talk about. First of all, is a shoplifter a scumbag or not? Because one particular shopkeeper in Wrexham in Wales put up a sign saying, look, if you need your accesses because of scumbag shoplifters, I'll have to unlock it for you. Police turned up and said, I don't think you should be calling them scumbags. Later had to clarify that actually nothing illegal about him calling them scumbags. They are scumbags. Prime Minister's office was asked yesterday, does he think that shoplifters are scumbags? The answer came back, no. You're an ex-copper, are they?
Yeah, they're absolute scumbags. I think what's quite interesting, of course, is that I think it was North Wales Police where this occurred. The Chief Constable there has seen fit to add, alongside disability and ethnicity, scumbaggery as a protected characteristic. So if you are a scumbag shoplifter, and of course all shoplifters are indeed scumbags.
I think you'll find these are desperate women who are desperately trying to feed their babies. That's what we've always been told.
desperately trying to feed their babies by shoplifting and antiques and knickknack shop.
Yeah.
You can't eat the knickknacks. You don't go into there and enact your scumbaggery thievery in a shop like that. You might choose to steal a sandwich from Tesco's, but you're not going to do that. So of course, yes, they are absolute scumbags. There should be no restriction whatsoever in calling them scumbags. And I think a polite little sign on a shop window, written in very nice font, by the way, that simply says that due to scumbag shoplifters, if you want to access some of the cabinets, you're going to have to ask thank you very much. I don't think that's too much, in all honesty.
No, but what's interesting, though, is the fact that the police turned up to talk about that. But as we know, certainly every shopkeeper in my local high street points out, if you actually have a scumbag shoplifter in your shop, they don't turn up.
Well, exactly. Well, this tells us everything about two-tier care, two-tier policing and two-tier priorities. Shoplifting has been characterised for a long time now under numerous Home Secretaries as almost a non-offence.
Yes.
In fact, nationally, it costs us around £2.2 billion. So it's massive on a national scale. But on a local scale, if you're a little local shopkeeper and you are trying to make a living selling knickknacks and bits and pieces, then you have anything stolen. You have 100 quid of the stuff stolen.
Yep.
That can wipe out your profit for the week.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. So it's very, very important. Now, of course, Sir Keir Starmer is not going to call shoplifters scumbags. Although, interestingly, of course, he's more than happy to have a deputy prime minister who characterises her political opponents as scumbags. So yet again, we have two-tier Keir. He just doesn't like the term scumbag because it's very working class. It's the language of the people. And as you and I know, he doesn't like the people. He doesn't like people complaining. He is the chief priest in the church of the woke, poisoned mind. So, of course, he's not going to use or approve of language like that, except, of course, when it's used against his political opponents. And then it's okay.
And then scum is absolutely fine. Yeah, it's okay for Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, to refer to Tories as a whole, not just the particular Tory cabinet minister. That would be acceptable either, as scum. But no, not a shoplifter. I mean, it is just quite bizarre, isn't it? There's also some interesting stats involving, which was Sadiq Khan, the London mayor. He posted a post on X pointing out that theft. Well, he's posted a chart on social media highlighting that knife crime had dropped by 19%, residential burglary dropped by 10%, theft from the person and personal robbery had dropped by 13% in the first 3 months of this year compared to last year, and basically saying, these are all down in London, but there's still a long way to go before I'm satisfied. Of course, no one's ever able to reply to his messages, but other people pointed out that actually, these are all figures from a London Assembly Committee meeting last month, that actually an awful lot of other offences have gone up and gone up by a lot more than those figures have gone down. Gun crime up by 18%, rape up by 9%, shoplifting, as we've just been talking about, up by 38%. I mean, these have been accused of gaslighting, certainly the public in London, and of course a lot of people around the country who come to London, come on a trip, who might be put off now by the level of crime in our capital city. But certainly, we are looking at a massive increase in crime that is not just being felt, it is real. We know it. The number of people I know have had a phone, a bag stolen, had attempted burglary or burglary of their home, their car stolen. We know the numbers are going sky high. And there's the mayor of this city, the Police and Crime Commissioner, who's in charge of the police budget and how it is spent in our city, telling us everything's fine, it's just a little bit of a way to go. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, this is gaslighting not seen since comical Ali stood in front of Saddam Hussein's palace and said nothing to see here. What Sadiq Khan has done here, he said, look, knife crime has gone down. Well, of course it's gone down because the criminals have swapped their knives for guns. He said, look, theft from private properties has gone down. Yes, but now they're concentrating on more serious crime, including rape. That is not a win, except in the mind of somebody who is absolutely insane and who values his own political position more than the actual reality of life on the streets of London. It's entirely wrong. And by the way, great shout out to Rory Geegan who brought this to national attention.
Yep.
Fantastic.
He's founder of the Public Safety Foundation. We need to get him on the show.
Yeah, no, he's a really, really good chap. He does some fantastic work, and he needs to take credit for that, not fair cop.
But again, these are official figures. I mean, this is the thing. Well, we're constantly being told things are fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine, and lots of crime is going down. And these national crime surveys, the gold standard of surveys in terms of everything's fine. But we live in the real world. Everyone knows. I mean, in my local area, generally, I've had my bags stolen. One of my friends had 2 bikes locked up, 2 bikes stolen in a week. We've had 2 burglary attempts on our home. We've lived here in our place 19 years. We've never had a burglary attempt. We've certainly not been aware of a burglary attempt in all those years until then. Something's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the way it's recorded quite often. I mean, I know one of the things that your producer said we may be talking about is the speech that Andrea Jenkins, the Mayor of Lincolnshire, gave, where she said that, what was it?
She said, I don't feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely. She didn't feel safe, but one of her staff had been chased down the street by an activist wielding a lump hammer. She'd been advised by a political enemy to wear a bulletproof vest, amongst other things. And then the police simply said, oh, nothing to see here. No crime here. So if you're pick and choosy as a police officer, as a chief constable, about what you record as a crime and what you simply don't record as a crime, then you can manipulate the figures however you like.
And it's also if you send the police officers out so you can find people. And as we discovered, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick, when he posted that, it was an excellent video of him tackling people who were not paying their fare on the tube, which is in London. Again, this is very London-centric, but this is happening everywhere. It's not just happening in the capital city. And it was pointed out that actually the next month the prosecutions for people dodging their fares went up by over 50%, pointing out that the police are making a choice not to prosecute and are making a choice to prosecute. And every time you send someone out to talk to somebody who's got a sign up in their shop, or you don't like something they've posted on social media, or they've misgendered someone using correct grammatical choice of pronouns, you're not policing the shoplifters and the rapists and the burglars.
And the thing is, when we hear these stories, we're never surprised by them, Julia. No. We can almost predict what the response to any situation is going to be. And this is because the police have made political choices and they try to pass it off as an operational choice. For instance, when they pick up a bunch of protesters and bust them in, they say that's an operational choice. Not that they would ever pick up and provide a taxi service for people wearing Union Jacks. Of course, that would never, ever happen for operational reasons. So it always goes one way. You know, when you see the police bringing tea and biscuits and cucumber sandwiches to protesters who have glued themselves to the highway, it's always ever one side. You can predict which side of any political debate the police are going to pander to and where they're going to come down hard on.
Absolutely. Can I ask you this? As a police officer, as a former police officer, I'm going to, for those who are watching, we can play a bit of video of this. There's a man who was standing on, again, I'm sorry this is so London-centric, guys, but there's a man standing on the tube, an open tube, 3 in the afternoon, and he just basically pulls his trousers down. He's got his todger out, and he's just standing there. And when he's approached, and all credit to the man who approached him, "Oi, mate, you need to pull your trousers back off, get off the train," and he just shouts very aggressively, very loudly, F off, and then starts sort of hitting out with his belt. Another man gets involved, more men get involved, and they basically sort of bundle him to the ground. It actually gets, there's a few punches and kicks. The video kind of pushes away at quite a crucial point, rather frustratingly, and then they bundle him out of the tube. It turns out there is an off-duty police officer there as well. I don't know if they were actually involved at that point or not, but they sodding well should have been. And then he's on the ground, and then they wait for tube staff to come and get him. But they got him off the train. Now, Harry Miller, I know you would have seen this video. What do you make of what these people did? And there's talk about they could possibly face charges. And I have to say, if I was on the jury, they can be guaranteed they will not face conviction, certainly. But what do you make of what they did? Was it the right thing?
No, I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. It's what I would do, and it's what I think any normal person would do. The instinct when you find somebody on a public transport where there are children present, behaving like that, getting their todger out, etc.
And being very verbally aggressive.
then absolutely. What is the alternative? What, call for the British Transport Police?
Yeah,
They're not on the tube, are they? They're busy on a
But also,
DE
the claim
course,
as well,
aren't they?
they think he had mental health problems. Even more reason to get him off the train, because he's even more of a risk, because we don't know. Is he schizophrenic and he's going to suddenly get a knife out and kill people? We don't know.
Exactly. It's not the job of these people who were sharing the carriage with him to diagnose any mental health. It's not their job to do that. It's their job to get that individual out of harm's way and out of the way of harming other people. So I think what they did was entirely justified.
More
I
men
hope
like
that common
that
sense prevails. Yes, of course
standing
we do.
up
Of course we do.
for our safety. Finally, I've got to ask you, this is the most important question today. It's 11:47. I'm talking to you on camera. I can see you on camera right now. It is 30-odd degrees today. Apparently we're all going to just try and make it to the end of the day alive, according to the BBC. You appear to be wearing, I hate this word, but a gilet. A puffer. You've got padded. How good is your aircon, mate?
I don't have aircon, but I live up north. It's several degrees cooler up here. Plus, also, Julia, I've got standards. I have to look a certain degree of cool when I'm on your show.
Yeah, baby.
Mr. Gilet, man, that's me.
Harry Miller, great to talk to you. Former Police Officer Harry Miller, thank you very much. Tom Slater, very much not in a gilet. We've got the aircon on full blast in here and it's still boiling in here. What do you make of what Harry had to say? Would you stand up to someone on the train like that?
Well, I think it's incumbent on men in particular, because they're the ones who have to step up in situations like this to deal with those situations, because there's never always going to be a police officer there. There's never always going to be.
It never is.
Exactly. You'd be waiting a long time if that was the.
I think we just wait for the British Transport Police.
And people kind of getting upset about this, you just think, of course, no one wants to see those kinds of scenes, but they were created by the presence of that individual who was exposing himself.
If you don't want to be manhandled and beaten up on the tube, maybe don't get your kit off on the tube and start shouting F off at people and brandish. But he was brandishing a belt, so he was actually had to be manhandled to the ground. I genuinely, if any of those blokes who are involved in that, if any of those guys involved, please get in touch. I would like to shake their hand. I'd like them to wash their hands because they'd be manhandling a bloke who got his tonsure out. But I would love to get you on the show, and I would love to shake your hand and say thank you for standing up and doing the right thing on the public transport and making it a bit safer. Please, please, please get in touch. Honestly, give us a call, 0344 499 1000 if you know any of those guys involved, because genuinely we need more of you. I think we used to call you real men. We need more of them. 11:49 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about NHS staff, particularly in A&E, under attack. 4,000 attacks on staff working in NHS A&E units in just the last year. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Of course, left-wing ideologues, and rather than address the uncomfortable fact that men from different cultures perhaps have a medieval attitude towards women and girls, they've instead tried to claim that the problems arriving in the statistics are the result of a failure of integration. And if we just have more money put into integration strategies, we just give more benefits.
Wouldn't it be fair to say that actually it's living proof that much integration or some integration doesn't bloody well work, rather than spending more money trying to force it down people's throats?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It is 11:52. This is Talk, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And let's talk about, well, violence against NHS staff. Violence against any staff who are providing a service, public or otherwise, are absolutely unacceptable. But A&E waits, those long waits, particularly you've got a member of your family in a lot of pain on a trolley in a corridor, apparently are helping to fuel 4,000 attacks on NHS staff in A&E in the last year. One worker is attacked every 2 hours, and the Royal College of Nurses say it's an utterly abhorrent level of violence, and the hospitals are basically a tinderbox, with nurses facing even threats from those who are armed with guns. Well, let's talk about this with Martin Gower. He's a former NHS Trust chairman and joins us now. Good morning to you, Martin.
Good morning, Julia, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks for...
It's not acceptable. Yeah. Everybody said all of that. This shouldn't happen. It's always happened to some degree. Yeah. Bear in mind the 4,000 figure doesn't include Wales, Scotland or Northern Ireland.
This is just England.
Purely for England. And I suspect the situation is probably just as bad there, and probably in some places even worse. Just a thought. If they sacked all the DEI champions and replaced them with highly competent security staff to oversee what goes on in A&E, I have a slight sense that could just work.
That might be more useful for the staff in terms of, yes, well, then they wouldn't be worrying about microaggressions, they'd be worrying about actual aggression. Look, the reality is the people who are in A&E, I mean, I had to go to A&E a number of times in my life. There's been a few times I've walked into A&E in my local hospital where, frankly, I thought I'd walked into the bar in the first Star Wars in terms of the people in there. I'm not going to lie. And often if you're unlucky enough to be there in an evening, certainly a weekend, you are looking at a lot of drunk people, and you're looking at a lot of people who have mental health problems, and a lot of people who are in no fit state at all. And then you often have people bring their families, their friends with them, brought them in, and they're like demanding that they get seen immediately. And of course, the staff are dealing with a heart attack that's just arrived, rather than dealing with someone's, cut foot or whatever. You can understand why it is a tinderbox, as the RCN says, in terms of why people are getting angry and why we end up with violence. But totally unacceptable. I mean, it is unacceptable that anyone in their workplace should be facing violence, particularly people who are trying to help people.
Yes, it is. And sadly, I think it rather reflects so much else that's going on in society.
Exactly.
I was listening to your previous guests, and I thought some of the points that were made there are just typical of what's going on, especially in the big cities. And I think we're being almost coached to reduce our level of expectation, and to expect that if you do go to an A&E, that department, that's what you're going to see. It starts off, of course, with the ambulance service, where people have perhaps waited for a few hours. Yeah. Before an ambulance comes. If you phone 999, you get a long sort of checklist of questions, one of which is this life-threatening? Well, I don't know whether the average person out there would know whether their loved one is threatened with life.
No, I disagree. I think there's very clear evidence that most reasons people call ambulances, they're not life-threatening, and those people should, frankly, get a taxi or get someone to give them a lift to A&E, and shouldn't be calling an ambulance. Unless you're having a heart attack or you're literally someone's lying under a car accident, you shouldn't be calling it for an ambulance.
Yeah. And if somebody's got severe pains in the chest and they're struggling to breathe, etc., of course. So the ambulance of frustration, the wait, the long list of questions they ask when you call them, and then they arrive at the hospital and they can't get them out of the ambulance because they can't get them into A&E, and then they're put in a corridor, and it goes on and on and on. I understand why people get very frustrated. I do understand that, but I don't feel I could excuse it.
No.
And the people who are drunk, who have had drugs, have been in fights, I think whether or not they become violent, there should be a fine for those people automatically. No need to go to court, no need to go get the police. They will be charged £100. So let's have your home details, mate, and you're going to have a £100 fine for turning up.
Well, what if they're the victim of a fight? They're more likely to be the victim if they're turning up at A&E than the perpetrator.
Well, that's a possibility, and they can argue that, and that can be assessed. But I've always thought, I mean, there was one city that I worked in for a while where the A&E had to set up a mobile A&E in one road in this city where all the clubs and pubs were.
Because there were so many people
to deal with all the fights and people falling.
Come on, tell us, which city was it? Come on.
I'm not telling you at all.
Rough region. South, North, Midlands. Come on.
Well, if I tell you what region, it's a bit of a giveaway to what city it is. But I was the managing director of a newspaper there. So
right, okay, someone quickly Google that, we'll put it together. No. But that makes sense. Then keep those people out of the hospital where people who are really sick, so having a heart attack or that who are needing to be treated. But the main problem here is that I do think we have an issue with people getting more and more violent and impatient, and people's behaviour generally is going downhill. But I do think, and also the drink and the drugs, but I do think also the waits it's just intolerable. I mean, frankly, I'm thinking, and again, unless I was at death's door, I wouldn't go to A&E. Absolute waste of time. You're not going to get seen. You're probably better off waiting till Monday to see your GP and just refusing to take no for an answer for an appointment. So the waiting is part of the issue. And I can understand some people, again, it doesn't excuse any violence, being so desperate for their loved ones that they do become aggressive. They shouldn't, I get that, but they're being pushed into that. People who would otherwise be totally law-abiding.
Yeah, I agree with that. But Julia, if you were a qualified nurse or doctor, would you want to go and work in A&E either?
Oh, good God. And they should not have to put up with it. Absolutely. Martin Gow, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thomas, a very quick word from you.
No, I think everyone agrees that kind of behaviour is totally unacceptable. But it is another reminder of just how much stress is being put on the system, how difficult it is to work in A&E increasingly. And also, to be perfectly frank, the more kind of fractious relations you can have between patients and staff when the whole system is such a mess.
I've been sitting and waiting in A&E listening to everyone playing videos loudly on their phones. God. I've got to be honest with you, that's intolerable enough. I'd rather die at home in the peace and quiet, to be honest with you. Love to hear your thoughts on all the topics we've been talking about. Kate Hoey up next. Lots more top guests. More from Tom and more from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call, but you knew that already. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
very, very good afternoon. Good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. It's coming up to 3 minutes past midday. Thank you very much indeed for your company, whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. Again, somehow, despite the best efforts of the BBC scaremongering, surviving a beautiful, lovely, hot August summer day in our country. Let's hope we all make it to the end of the day. But, if not, at least it's till 1 o'clock. Keep on going. Keep on trucking, everybody. Anyway, I'm with you, as I say, until 1 o'clock. Plenty more to come. And don't forget, if you do miss any of the show, you missed anything already, you can go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and hit subscribe so you never miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about that. 50,000 illegal migrants who've crossed the channel since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister and smashed the gangs. That is one illegal migrant every 11 minutes. And Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, saying, well, actually, shouldn't we just be putting these illegal migrants into camps rather than putting them in hotels or in homes near everyone else? Plus, whether or not you would call a shoplifter a scumbag or not, because one shopkeeper was told off by the police in Wales for doing so. And the, as I say, yellow heat health alert that is in place for most of England, with the prospect of an amber heat health alert coming if we carry on getting hotter. We're expected to peak somewhere apparently in the mid-30s today in the south of the country, making Britain hotter than Ibiza, but without perhaps the clubs and the swimming pools to go with it. The UK authorities are warning of a rise in deaths. They don't warn of a rise in deaths in winter, despite the fact that 9 out of 10 deaths coming in related to any temperature are as a result of the cold. It's almost like it might be propaganda, isn't it? Plus, jobless youngsters need to get off the couch and onto the building site. Who says that? Well, the government. They've warned that the housing crisis is being made worse by a lack of construction workers. So Labour is unveiling a £100 million plan to train 40,000 builders by 2029. I mean, don't fall off your seat, but that might actually be what's called a sensible policy. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of those topics. Also, Ukraine, lots of calls coming in on that as well. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. I'm sure you'd like to publicly congratulate the Prime Minister on hitting that 50,000 illegal migrant target, up almost 50% on the year in terms of the number of people arriving in this country on those boats from the Channel, across the Channel. You can text as well on 87222. You can get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 altogether now. Standard network rate message. Tom Slater, I'm sure, can say that in his sleep as well. Head over Spiked Online is still with us. We're going to get to those jobless youngsters getting, apparently being sent off to go to try and learn the building trade. That is actually finally a good and sensible policy. We say, we've got to we need to build more homes and do massive construction. We do, but we haven't got any builders to do it. We have to import a load of people, and then we need more homes for all the people who import. It's obvious. We've got a load of young people, particularly young men who are unemployed, and we need homes built. I mean, this is not, Einstein levels of cleverness to work out training more builders might be a good idea.
It's a bit alarming that it's taken them so long to connect those two quite close dots, but nevertheless, it's at least they're slowly catching up with this. I mean, it's so funny how so many different government policies just completely conflict. So you've got right now the Labour Party saying we're going to smash our house building targets. Meanwhile, and we all know they're not going to. Meanwhile, they're not doing the planning law reform or. Well,
they were trying to. They can get through it. They can look. They've got a majority of God knows what. They can get through any planning reform they want to.
Well, I just think it's been fascinating how even everything they try to do just ends up getting pared back, and I don't think anyone believes.
Well, it ends up upsetting people.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everyone says more houses should be built, just not near them.
No, exactly. And the problem is you might have had previously a kind of NIMBYist Tory MP, but just because that person is now wearing the red rosette doesn't mean they're not getting the same letters, they're not getting the same emails.
Yeah.
They're not
from people with a lovely view saying that I don't want anyone else to be here, even though of course their house was built at some point. I mean, it's quite bizarre. Exactly. A lot of that, I think, comes down to the kind of housing that's built. These horrible, ugly modern estates. There is a way of building stuff that actually, fits in with the locals. And again, I think we need to build. We need to build whole new cities. But also, if we actually deport a lot of people who haven't got any right to be here, we may find we have more space. Just throwing that idea out there. More from Tom Slater coming up. We're going to get your calls as well very soon. Give us a call, particularly. I'd love to hear from you about the 50,000 channel migrant line being hit yesterday when we had another 400 odd migrants turning up. I mean, 400, 154. I mean, it's just depends on the weather, doesn't it? It doesn't appear to have anything to do with government policy. So how much should we blame the Prime Minister? How much should we blame the last few Prime Ministers for their failings on this? Love to know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. But let's get the thoughts right now. Baroness Kate Hoey. She's a former Labour MP, now an independent peer. Good afternoon to you, Kate.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Who do we blame for this? And do you have any sympathy for the Prime Minister and indeed the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, for the fact they've miraculously, despite smashing the gangs and having a nice conversation with Macron, not been able to deal with the small boats crisis?
Well, I don't think you would expect me to have any sympathy at all for the Prime Minister. And of course, you know, he was the one who went on with all these wonderful promises about, you know, smashing the gangs and getting the numbers down and dealing with all of them who did turn up more quickly. And all of it has been a failure. And I think the Home Office officials are just scrambling around to find something new to come out with. I mean, it is. I mean, I wasn't a great fan of the Rwanda scheme, but I did think at least it could have been tried when Starmer came in, because they'd spent all that money, and it would have been some kind of way of saying to people, look, we don't really want you, and you're going to have to go back, and you're going to go to Rwanda if you're illegally landing in our country. But I think for me, the bottom line in all of this is that everyone who's arriving cannot be treated in a better way than we're treating our homeless people who are already on the streets. Many people are veterans, or people who are quite poor. And, you know, the idea that they come in and they get all of these extra things, and they get private...
the NHS health waiting list, dental care.
Private medical treatment, get to see a dentist, all of the things that many of us struggle, or certainly in some areas of the country struggle. And so I do think that unless, you know, the government is only gradually now, they're beginning to realise that this is affecting local people. Not particularly, I think, that they're worried it's affecting them. I think they're more concerned that it's affecting how they're going to vote at the next election. You know, I have some sympathy with what the Conservative leader has said, Kemi Badenoch, about camps, but I don't understand why we can't use some of the empty army camps that are already empty, apparently. I don't know the detail of some of them, but there certainly seems to be some way that we could be. He's obviously going to try and get them out of hotels. Yep. The last thing people want is streets being bought up by the government.
Yeah, I think that the whole idea of Yvette Cooper saying we promised we get people out of their hotels. Yeah. Again, Tories promised that too. Doesn't seem to be working so well. We were told there were no 4-star hotels being used anymore. Well, yes, there are. But either way, I think that's the worst possible thing. People, you know, 6 guys there, 4 men there. We won't know, at least when they're in a hotel, as we've seen with Epping, and Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, was down in Epping yesterday, actually talking to local protesters about the Bell Hotel in Epping. And where these protests started is, you know, at least, you know, parents being able to go, right, well, we know, don't walk past there because those men are harassing, you know, the teenage girls and the like. At least when you know where people are, that's a start. There's some sort of policing. But it's very clear to me, I mean, these people shouldn't be on the streets, absolutely shouldn't be able to work either legally or illegally, as they now currently are doing. And we need to make life humane, civilised, but inhospitable for these arrivals.
Yes, well, given what the conditions they're leaving in France, it wouldn't take very much extra here to give them a slightly better life than what they've had in France. True. And, you know, that, and even Macron himself seemed to recognise that there was a pull factor, that people are saying, look, it's worth all this hassle, it's worth this danger, it's worth it all, because when we get to the United Kingdom, we will be given first-class citizenship practically. But, you know, as I've said before, Julian, I'm very, very worried that what they are doing is taking on extra people to process these illegal migrants, and that very, very many of them will simply rubber stamp, because that means it gets out of one area of the Home Office and moves towards the department that deals with people.
This is the thing. And then they'll say, look, it's not, we've massively slashed the number in the back, but we've slashed the people in hotels. They're not costing us anything. These people will, of course, suddenly be legal, living here, and great contributors to their local societies, starting businesses, being employed as the engineers and astrophysicists as they are. Because load of codswallop. These people are going to be on benefits their entire lives. But working in the black market.
I wonder why no one has suggested to Keir Starmer that he goes down to Epping and meets some people. I mean, it doesn't seem
good Prime Minister would, wouldn't he?
Well, you would have thought that he would have gone to try and at least show that he understood the concern, not just in Epping, but all over the place. But he's obviously too concerned about being seen as a world statesman and heading off round.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if we send Macron down to Epping, and then Keir Starmer might be willing to be in there. Remember when he went to Southport after the Southport attacks?
Yeah,
and of course there were people protesting. He knows he will not get a good welcome, but he won't get. The thing is, so for him the problem would be, I won't get a nice welcome. The people will protest. No, the problem is, people will protest you because you're not doing your job properly.
Yeah, yes. No, it's absolutely right. And of course, every day something else happens that kind of irritates and makes people angry. I mean, the various issues about people. I just saw something there before I came on, which I was amazed about, how the police apparently are driving around in certain areas where young women police constables are out having a run, and the police car in tracksuits, and the police car is following it. And if anyone toots or shouts, you know, "Oh, I like your legs" or something, they now stop those cars. And I just think, you know, I mean, of course we don't want women to be harassed and things. Honestly, it gets ridiculous.
But is it a priority? I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, I must ask you about something in another story we've been talking about all morning as well, is the shopkeeper in Wrexham, Wales, who put up a sign saying, you know, look, you know, because of scumbag shoplifters, if you want to, you know, see something in this shop, in your knick-knack antique shop, I'll have to open the cupboards for you because of the scumbag shoplifters. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfectly reasonable. Police turn up. They don't turn up when he's got a shoplifter.
No,
but they do turn up because they don't like his sign. Later had to clarify, not actually an offence to have that. Since when is calling someone a scumbag when they're being a scumbag a problem? But the Prime Minister's spokeswoman was asked yesterday, does the Prime Minister agree that shoplifters are scumbags? He said no. Do you think they are?
I certainly do, and I see nothing wrong with calling them scumbags. I mean, I was in Parliament for a long time, now in the House of Lords. I've never seen a piece of legislation going through, you must not call anyone a scumbag. And I think the shopkeeper is obviously so frustrated, and he thought that this would help. I did know a shop actually in Northern Ireland where once they had so many people who owed them money that they put the names of the people who owed them money up in front of the shop window.
Right.
They got the money back, I think, very quickly from a lot of the people, because then their name was taken down. But also, I remember the thing that we had: sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And I mean, it's just outrageous that police, so many turn up for ridiculous things.
And this is the issue.
And we have to blame. You know, I don't know why the police and crime commissioners, that other bit of bureaucracy that was introduced with huge amounts of money, why they're not intervening and saying, look, police, get back to doing what you're meant to be doing.
Well, this is the thing. That was the point of them. Although these tended, instead of being sort of fine, upstanding local members of the local community representing ordinary people, they turned out to just be another load of, with all due respect to most of them, second-rate, no-mark ex-politicians or would-be politicians. And I'm sorry, if you want to call in as a police and crime commissioner, and prove me wrong, please do. But they don't seem to have any real powers. And we know that a lot of the decisions by police, when they say we haven't got the resources, no, that's because you're putting resources into other things which people don't prioritise. And you got, well, the most famous police and crime commissioner in the country, of course, is Sadiq Khan, London mayor. That's also one of his roles. And he's just been accused of gaslighting everyone. Let's use the word lying. That's what he was doing. Basically saying, cherry-picking a few crimes where the figures look like the crimes are going down, but then completely ignoring all the crimes like rape, like shoplifting, like other violent attacks, where the problem is getting worse. I mean, but the thing is, this is the thing. It's like the don't protest against the migrants. Just try and stop that from happening, or put them or hide them away so we don't know about them. Don't give the real stats on shoplifting. Tell us everything's fine. The authorities can keep doing that, like they did for years, telling us that the EU doesn't change how we run our country. Well, yes, it did. That crime is fine. That mass migration is absolutely a boon to us economically and socially and community-wise. You can keep telling lies as long as you want. But we've got eyes and ears. We can see for ourselves that that's not true.
I think more than any other government, this government seems to be oblivious to what, I hate the word, but ordinary people actually are thinking. And they're just so out of touch.
Sane people.
And their MPs that should be in touch probably know this, but they have such sort of loyalty and such kind of, the way they just pander to everything that the Prime Minister says. How many people have we seen speak out from the Labour Party who are members of Parliament on any of the kind of issues that your listeners and viewers are really interested in? Very, very few.
Yeah.
It's a very depressing time, but it's not so depressing because we're seeing people come back.
And that's the thing. A lot of people are saying, and we talk about on the show a lot, that actually, we're reaching, a tinderbox territory. Things have hit a tipping point. People going, we're done, we've had enough. And I know you will feel as well as I do. And I'm sure the majority, but perhaps not all of my audience, that peaceful protest is the only way of dealing with it in a democracy. But is that a cause for concern that things have got to such a bad state and people are so frustrated? Or is it a cause for hope that people are saying, no, we are going to stand up, we're not afraid of you name calling anymore, we're going to stand up and say this isn't good enough, we want it better, and we are going to force, through the threat of the ballot box and our peaceful protesting, politicians to finally do what the people want?
Well, I think it's certainly proof that people are absolutely frustrated and fed up and angry, getting angrier. And I think that is what protests should be: peaceful, strong, angry, but peaceful. And I welcome it. I really do welcome it. I think there are lots of other things that we could be protesting about. But, this is something the government is not going to be able to ignore. They might try to ignore it. They're not going to be able to ignore it. And, of course, what we see is that the other party that is really, really pushing now to be the next government is benefiting from all of this, and that's a Reform Party, because they're coming out with some of the, what you'd say, common sense policies that people are saying, why hasn't the government done this?
Yeah, I mean, people can call them far right or even right wing. I think they're centre ground. I think most of the people who think they're centre ground are so now far to the left. And again, you were a Labour MP. A lot of Labour MPs go, Kate Hoey, she's gone off to the right. You're saying the same things you've always said.
Absolutely. And this is what, I've watched other people go off to the right or the left or whatever. But I think the labels now are just ridiculous. We don't need them. What we need is more of people speaking out, saying what they think, and not being afraid of having a policeman tap on their door or take off their...
Do you know what? I don't think it's left or right. Remember, for a long time it became Brexit or Remain. I think it's now sane and not sane. I really think people who want policies based on reality and people want policies based on fantasy. That's what it comes down to. Kate Hoey, always great to talk to you. I wish you were still in the Commons rather than the Laws, but I know you're doing great work on the Laws. Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer, former Labour MP. Thank you for that. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Wherever you want to comment on that. But
no, I think Kate really well articulated that kind of general sense of mood, which is that people are pushing back. They are having their voices heard, and what's been so striking about that is that it's kind of entirely independent of the kind of organised protest movements we might think about previously. These things have sprung up very organically around these hotels, and it's also very much pitted against this government, which when it came in you kind of suspected maybe its tactics was to sort of bore us into submission. Keir Starmer, despite being someone who you wouldn't expect to set pulses racing, is hated out there in the country.
I mean, he's the sort of person you just go, I don't like him very much, but I can't be bothered.
Exactly.
He's really the chanting at football grounds.
At football grounds on these protests, you'll often, choruses of Keir Starmer is a W, kick off from time to time. This is say the word. It's become a real thing. So I think it's interesting that people are pushing back in this very sort of organic fashion, but also it's square against this government, which they see as, they know that these problems have been building up for some time, but I think they recognise rightly that this government is the kind of
isn't the solution.
Isn't the solution.
Yeah, but then people, I think a lot of people who voted Labour, there were people who went, oh no, we're going to put Labour and it's all going to be fine. Yeah, good luck with that. And do carry on listening to your Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart podcast. But well, good luck. But I do just think that most people, they either voted Labour just because they were just fed up with the Tories, or they didn't vote Tory, or they voted for Reform, and they knew that part of the deal of that, they always get a Labour government, and they were like, fine, but the Tories need to be punished, and they need to know. And that's my thing. The key thing about democracy is your ability to punish governments that don't do what they do. So this lot can fail. Tories can fail, and this lot can fail, and even the next lot can fail, but we still have the power. Now, we may have to wait a long time, but we will get a government that will do our bidding eventually. The question is how much our bidding is going to be ramped up when we do get it. All I can say to politicians right now is be careful what you wish for. right now, because if you're not listening to people's moderate, peaceful voices right now, things are going to get a lot darker. And when Nigel Farage warns of things like people go, oh, you're stoking it up. No, he's not stoking it up. He's giving everyone a reality check. And we've seen what's happened in Europe, and we're seeing what's happening now. And politicians like, say, Friedrich Merz in, I always want to go to Merkel. It just goes straight there. Merz in Germany. I mean, as an SPD new chancellor, as the coalition government, you would not have expected him to do some of the things he's done. But in terms of things like the reality check, like rearming and things in the wake of the threat from Russia, but also basically cutting in illegal migration to Germany by almost 50%, virtually overnight. It shows it's possible to do where there's a will, there's a way. But he's basically he wants to take on the AfD in Germany. Well, if Labour or the Tories want to take on reform, you need to actually deliver. That's what we want. It's coming up to 12:23. Going to take your calls now. I know a lot of you want to have your say on Ukraine as well. We were talking about a little bit earlier, particularly where we've got the Alaska summit coming up on Friday between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. No invite for Zelensky. Should he be at the table? But what do you make of Zelensky apparently telling other European leaders he would be willing to cede territory, but he needs security guarantees? What do you make of that? Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Your thought on scumbag shoplifters, on migrants, topping that 50,000 mark, whatever you want to talk about, give us a call. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Left-wing ideologues, and rather than address the uncomfortable fact that men from different cultures perhaps have a medieval attitude towards women and girls, they've instead tried to claim that the problems arriving in the statistics are the result of a failure of integration. And if we just have more money put into integration strategies, we just give more benefits.
Wouldn't it be fair to say that actually it's living proof that much integration or some integration doesn't bloody well work, rather than spending more money trying to force it down people's throats?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is the Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Going to get to your calls in just a moment. Let's get some of the texts and tweets coming in about those official figures set to show today that 50,000 Channel migrants have now arrived since Keir Starmer became PM and promised to smash the gangs. It's up 50% on the year. I mean, well done. At least they've achieved something. Black holes more than doubled. We've still got inflation going up, unemployment's going up. I mean, well done, smashing the gangs. It's all going really well. Well done, Prime Minister. What's your reaction to all of that? Michael says, send out the Royal Navy to stop them entering the UK. Best way to turn the boats around. Again, and then they drop themselves into the water, and then the Royal Navy has to pick them up, and then they have to bring them to the UK. It doesn't work, guys, unless the French agree to take them back, which I think we should force them to do, but I'm not sure how we do that. Richard says we can't blame the French for wanting to get rid of them. This is true. Bobby says the country is in absolute turmoil. We're facing the demise of Britain and people are in an apathetic coma. I think less so in terms of the apathy, Bobby. David says this shouldn't come as a surprise. We all knew Starmer would fail miserably. Faye says it feels like Starmer has done more to protect the gangs than actually smash them. Louise says, come on, guys, where's your heart? All those poor women and children coming over. Yeah, a majority of them, according to a Treasury Minister. Roger says, failed Prime Minister, failed government, time to get rid of them. Brenda says it's a national disgrace. They don't belong here. We have just celebrated VE Day and VJ Day soon. What did those generations fight and die for? God bless them. Neil says people need to realise Labour, all the Conservatives have or had no intentions of stopping any boats or deporting anyone already here. And Adrian says fixing the foundations, taking on the tough decisions, getting on with the job is not worth listening to anything that they say. Right, well, let's turn our attention back to Ukraine now. Colin's on the line. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000 and he's in Norway and wants to talk about Ukraine. A very good afternoon to you, Colin.
Hello, Julia. You
Hello.
okay?
Very well. Yeah, what are you doing in Norway?
I live here. I've got a wife here, 3 kids. I've been here about 20 years now.
Yep. Okay. All right, yeah. Well, can I just ask, what's the weather like in Norway right now?
It's not very good. It's about 13 degrees and it's been raining all day. It should be better tomorrow, though.
Oh, okay. But yeah, we're beating Norway, folks. We've got about 30 odd. Apparently, we're all going to die by the end of the day because of the heat.
Norway.
Yeah, exactly. Right. What do you want to?
Norway.
Yeah, always. What do you want to say about Ukraine, my love?
Okay, last time I called you, it was during the Titan sub disaster. I was your ROV pilot, your submarine pilot.
My goodness, yes. We seem to have literally like every caller for about a week was an expert on subs. It was the most extraordinary thing.
It was interesting. And part of my job, I think I mentioned at the time, is I work on ships, either in the North Sea, the Med, lots of places. And it's a very international crew we have. And not so long ago, I was working, and there was this guy on board. He was about 40 years old, and he's from Sebastopol. Mm-hmm. And it used to be the equivalent of Portsmouth for the USSR many years ago. And basically his story was, when Ukraine took over, there was always corruption under the USSR, but the corruption levels went through the roof, and the roads were full of potholes. There was no social services. The place was falling apart.
Sounds like Britain.
So when the Russian Sorry?
Sounds like Britain.
Yeah. So when the Russians did move back in, there wasn't a lot of sorrow. And basically, under Russia, they're happier than they were under Ukraine, purely because the conditions are better. And one of the things he did say, if you want to meet somebody who wants to be part of Ukraine, you have to drive about 4 hours to the west. Now, that's the guy who actually lives there. So
okay, that's the opinion of one man who lives there. The trouble is, got the small matter of the fact that democratic elections, people have voted for parties repeatedly that are keeping Ukraine a sovereign nation state.
Is that in Sebastopol?
The Ukrainian people have made... No, but Colin, meeting a bloke on holiday or at work who has a different opinion... There are definitely people who live in, particularly the east of Ukraine, the ones, the Donbass region, who regard them as they're Russian speakers. Mind you, by the way, so was Zelensky raised as a Russian speaker, by the way, who regard as Russian. The Russian people, the Putin regard Ukraine as Russian. It's not Ukraine, it's not... They don't even recognise... He doesn't believe it's a sovereign nation state. But it is one. Full stop, and it is one. It's been invaded.
All I'm saying was, this came out of the blue. It's an opinion I never expected to hear. but it should be thrown in there, I think.
No, but okay, but again, we've got to think, a lot of Russian speakers being pushed by Putin into these areas, and the same thing that we've seen in the Baltic states as well. More and more Russians better to actually try and generate that sort of pro-Russian feeling. This is what Putin does. He plays a very, very long game. But yeah, there's loads of problems with corruption. All Soviet countries, all post-Soviet countries have massive levels of corruption because it doesn't function without corruption. But they've been dealing with it. Romania had massive levels of corruption after Ceausescu and still does. Didn't stop them being able to join the EU. But what do you think specifically about this meeting on Friday, the Alaska summit? Do you think Zelensky should be in the room? Are you worried or hopeful about what they're going to agree?
I think if he was in the room for the first one, it would basically create a bit of a firestorm. I think if Trump speaks to the two leaders separately, then he's got something to work on bringing them together. I think
how do you bring them together?
Well, there's got to be something he can say to Putin. Then the next day,
get out of Ukraine. You could say, get out of Ukraine, or I'm going to start bombing you.
We all know that. That's not happening.
I know.
You can't make him do that. There's no way in the world he's going to give up that territory. It's costing too much.
Yeah, well, and again, cost the Ukrainian people too much to perhaps agree and say, yeah, we'll let that territory go. Colin, appreciate your call. Thank you very much. Thank you for your great insights. We were talking about that Titanic sub. Carl is on the line in Liverpool, and he wants to talk about migration. Afternoon to you, Carl.
Afternoon, Julia. You're all right.
Yeah, what do you want to say, my love?
Well, there's 50,000 boat migrants that have come over since Labour's come in. I honestly think, Julia, and I think I heard Pete Barnes say it last week, that he believes there's a sinister sort of element to this whole thing. I believe
it's deliberate.
I can't believe anyone's that stupid, Julia, to just keep this going while the British people are protesting.
I understand that sentiment, but it's like the same about people thinking there was a big conspiracy about, lockdown and things like that. Trust me, I've met these people. They're not capable of that level of competence. They're useless. They're useless. They're not capable of it. They're just rubbish at dealing with it, and it's not their problem because they're not living next door to these people. They don't care. It's not their daughters who are being harassed or raped. They don't care.
Yeah, well, I went to the protest in Liverpool outside the hotel.
Good for you.
Just gone, and they're just shipping these Antifa mob in. From all over the place.
Totally.
And I don't understand it. We were saying, you're not even from the area, why you're here.
Yeah, saying refugees are welcome. Well, have one in your house then. House one in your home.
Exactly. Yeah, it's gone bonkers, Julia. I think I said this to a few of my ex-military friends that I think we'll see a civil war before a world war, before any sort of war in Europe or anything, because of the state of this country and the feeling.
Well, except who would be fighting against? Because pretty much everyone I speak to, left and right, agrees with you and me.
Yeah.
So I'm not who would be fighting against the authorities. I mean, that's the thing. Carl, so appreciate your call, and I understand. I understand the frustration. I really do. 12:35 is the time. Very quick word from Tom Slater. Do you think this is all they must be doing it deliberately because no one in their right mind would allow this to happen otherwise?
Well, no, but I think I totally agree with you that when you get a little bit closer to the political world, when you see it a bit more up close, when you see the remarkably low quality individuals that we have nowadays, it's very clear that this is more cock-up than conspiracy. And I don't mean that to downplay the seriousness of what's happening.
They really are that rubbish at what they do.
Exactly. They really are that stupid. They really are that blinded by ideology, and they really are that useless as well. And that's how you get a problem.
Yeah,
like
indeed.
This.
Look at everything. It explains it all. I promise it explains it much better. 12:35, I say, is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking about whether or not we're all going to make it to the end of the day, given that we've got a heat wave. Well, it's not a heat wave until tomorrow, but it's all down to the figures. And why are we getting all these weather warnings? And is it global warming? Well, we'll talk to Jim Dale about all of that. Oh, yeah. And we're talking about a sensible policy from the government, assuming it all actually happens, announced today about dealing with our house building crisis by actually trading up 40,000 British builders. Have they finally seen sense? Who knows? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon, 12:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Welcome back to Talk. Let's talk right now about the weather, because I'm sure you, like me, would have seen those weather forecasts saying, oh, we're heading for a heat wave. It might be over 30 in much of the country today, and that means that we're probably going to die, because apparently heat is very, very, very dangerous to us, despite the fact that actually most of us just think it's a nice, lovely, warm, hot, enjoyable summer's day in August. Lots of kids are off school, parents off work at the moment, maybe enjoy a nice trip to the seaside of the countryside, get the paddling pool out. What's not to like? Well, apparently we're not supposed to like it, because it's all down to climate change. Let's talk to Jim Dale. He's author of Whether or Not, the Personal and Commercial Impacts of Weather and Climate. A very good afternoon to you, Jim.
Hi, Julia.
Are you enjoying this weather?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Look
like you are. You're in the sunshine right now. You look like you're enjoying it.
Look, I want to give you a bit of atmosphere. This is what it's about. You're sat in a studio, in a cool studio with those air conditioners blowing. I know what it's like for you. It's very easy for you to talk about no deaths or difficulties, etc. No difficulties when you're sat in a nice studio like you are.
I'm not here all day. I'm only here for 3 hours in this studio.
Oh, okay, and then you're going to walk to the tube station as we did last time, etc. Get on a tube and get home, etc. This isn't aimed at...
I haven't got aircon at home.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, yeah, I'll still survive.
Yeah, Julia, the warnings are not aimed at you and me necessarily. They are aimed at the infirm, the very elderly, people with difficulties when it does go very hot. And let's be brutal. The heat wave starting today, by the way, not tomorrow. So it's going. We will see 32, 33, maybe a 30 today. Yeah. Fourth of the season, you may say that, but that's a couple of degrees off your body temperature. Once you exceed your body temperature, ask any marathon runner, etc. You have acute problems. So people who work out there, construction workers, farmers, they will have a distinct problem. It will affect us all.
Look, hot weather, and also, let's face it, we're British, we're not used to it, and people who live in hotter climes are more used to it. I get that. And I also get that people who are elderly or infirm have to take more care, babies and the like, but... You don't have to sit out in the middle of the glaring sun. You can keep your doors and windows closed. I get up, first thing we do, open all the doors and windows, get the cool air in, seal it in for the rest of the day. I mean, lots of people manage this. People manage this around the globe. You know as well as I do that actually every day that it's cold below a certain temperature, we see far more deaths than we see from when the temperature gets warm. And yet we don't have these warnings about deaths. We don't see every single day during the winter, oh, lots of people are going to die today because it's quite cold, even though actually statistically that's much more common. Why is that? Because it doesn't suit the climate change propaganda. You know that, I know that, and by the way, increasingly, so does the audience.
I don't think so. Something like 85% of this nation accepts that man-made climate change is a real thing. Now, let's listen.
It doesn't matter whether it's a real thing or not. It's still propaganda when you talk about how we're all going to die because we've had a couple of hot summer days in August.
That's your spiel. Let's just look at Spain and at France. France just today, Bordeaux, for example, many cities and towns exceeded their all-time record temperature.
All-time record since records began. Since when?
If you're not going to get the wildfires and the heat, you end up with the tremendous floods that are happening in other places of the world. If you can't,
we're getting the floods from the heat. How are we getting the floods from the heat? I'm very confused. The sun causes floods.
You're very confused because you're not professionally advised in this. That's the point. Absolutely the point. The point is more heat when you get the actual atmosphere. The moisture in the atmosphere, it can hold more. The atmosphere can hold more. So when it does downpour,
we do have bigger downpours. There is some evidence of that. However, the overall greening of the planet as a result of a warming climate has actually been proven to be rather good. And you know as well as I do, because we're talking about facts, that most extreme weather events haven't seen any increase at all in the last few decades. None at all.
I'm afraid they have.
I'm afraid they haven't. If you look at the official data, they haven't.
There's a couple of things to put together. And if we're talking about migrants a few minutes ago, let's make something clear. One of the reasons that there is excess migrants crossing the channel this summer is precisely because the conditions are right for it. They don't cross when there's a storm. They don't cross in the middle of winter very easily. So this is ideal.
Yeah, winter. summer, winter, summer. That's the difference here. Seasons, Jim. Seasons.
It's about the extremes that are happening in Spain, in France, in Bosnia, and in so
hot
many.
weather. They're having hot weather. Do you know what? I was in Sicily a couple of years ago, and it was all over the news here. And I put out some videos because it was really shocking.
I remember it. I was in the studio.
It was really shocking. We were driving down the motorway, and both the central reservation and the side of the road were on fire. I tell you what, the police. Oh, it happens every year. We were literally talking to people. We go, it's incredible. They were going, yeah, it happens most years. It's just.
But doesn't that worry you?
But it was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's down to abject failures. It's down to abject failures in forest management and vegetation management in a failing part of Italy, and they're very open about that.
Have you not seen the temperature profiles that are put out by NASA, by NOAA, and these organisations, Copernicus? All of these, okay? Science. What you're doing is you're denying the science.
Not denying the science.
You are.
No, because there's all these, because so many claims that are being made are being totally and utterly debunked. And even when we had our peak temperature, 40, whatever it was, degrees in the UK a couple of years ago, guess where that was? Oh, was it at Heathrow when 2 jets were taking off or landing? I mean, come on, Jim.
There's hundreds of stations. Aviemore, for
example. And many of them don't exist. Many of the stations, it's been completely debunked. Many of the stations that are claimed, they don't exist. But what they do is they average the local stations nearby and they make a guess of what that station would be recording. And the meteorological office will not give up the information about where those neighbouring stations are. Why not? Shouldn't that? No, it's officially recognised in official data that a large percentage of the data stations giving our temperature readouts for this country are actually what's called, what's called, they're not bogus bunkers, but they are junk. They are junk. Their readings are they're so meaningless, they're not worth looking at. That's according to official data.
No, it's not official data.
Yes, it is.
You get any Met Office person on here and say what you've just said, and they will debunk you in exactly the same way.
All right, let's do that. Yeah.
Do it.
Honestly, though, the thing is, the British people are walking around going, oh, it's a lovely summer's day. I wish I'd taken a week off. Well, luckily, I have taken a week off. Let's go to the seaside. We might have to sit in the shade for a few hours. It'll be nice going in the sea. Might get the paddling pool out. People are coping. If the weather does get warmer, and we might be going through a decadal heating phase, or we might be getting cold again soon, whatever it is, we can get air conditioning like a lot of the rest of the world. We don't think, most British people, the keep calm, carry on people, they don't think it's a drama or a crisis because we have a few sunny days. And even the elderly and infirm, they know what to do then. Why do we treat it like we're stupid every time the weather is good?
Because the yous and the me's and most people listening can cope with that. We know what to do or how to do it, and we take evasive action. The NHS, the people who put the warnings out, do it for a reason. They know, just the same as when we get the very cold weather, that you get excess people turning up in ambulances and others, simply because once you go beyond a certain point of your body temperature, you will start to affect it, and you will start to essentially hit the floor. That's what happens in the end. You can ask anybody.
But 9 out of 10 people who die of something related to the temperature, related, and again, often it's very elderly people who very sadly perhaps were not going to make it through another winter anyway. That temperature can affect them. But 9 out of 10 deaths are related to cold weather, not warm weather. We do not get the same heat. We do not get the same warnings about risk to us during cold weather as we get in hot weather, even though more people die.
This is not a race to the bottom, whether it's extremes of cold, extremes of heat, whether it's extremes of storms or wildfires, etc. All of these things constitute a danger and a hazard to certain groups.
Okay, I've got a solution for you, Dale. If we were using more reliable and cheap and affordable and secure fossil fuels, we would have cheaper energy, and the elderly people who die when it's cold because they're too afraid to put their second bar on their heater on, and the people who are living in very, very hot flat right now in a tower block could have air conditioning because it would all be affordable. That would be the solution, wouldn't it?
It's an absolute fallacy.
That would be the solution.
Renewables are far cleaner and will be as we go on. Look, they're now
but they're not affordable. They're not affordable, are they? Because our energy prices are still going up.
Energy. are taking far, far more of our energy use now, using that than oil and gas, the old style of things. So you can argue that till the cows come home, but I'm telling you, there'll be no turning back from this.
Oh, there will.
There'll be no turning back.
Most countries are turning back from it. Most countries weren't insane enough to do it. Mate, we are never going to rely on solar power and wind power to fuel most of our energy needs, apart from the fact they can only do electricity, and that's only 20% of our energy needs. I'm telling you, you know perfectly well it's never going to happen. Ed Miliband knows perfectly well it's never going to happen, but we're going to keep on making energy so expensive people can't afford aircon and they can't afford their heating in the winter. Because you would rather, you climate hysterics would rather the elderly and infirm people died of the heat or died of cold than actually give up and admit that you're wrong.
What's the motive? What's my motive? But I ask you,
well, it's a religious zealotry, isn't it? You can't admit that you're wrong.
Zealotry.
But we can stop people dying from the cold or the heat. We can make energy affordable.
Not when it goes to look. It's going to excess now. So in 10 years' time, what about the children of this world?
Oh, the children. Think of the children.
Yeah, think of the children.
I think most people's children will be absolutely thrilled to have lovely, warm summers here in the UK. Absolutely thrilled.
In 20 years' time, they will not.
They really will. Jim, I'm sure we'll still be talking in 20 years' time. And I'll still be right. At 12:49 is the time. Jim Dale, author of Whether or Not, Personal and Commercial Impacts of Weather and Climate. All good, by the way. Tell us later. A brief word to you.
That was very enjoyable, as it always is when you two go back and forth. But no, as you know, I'm very much on your side of the argument. The way in which environmentalism has just become a kind of apology for an acceptance of things getting more expensive and worse. And then
limiting our lives.
Absolutely. And then to see the kind of crocodile tears about the health impacts of weather, when, as we all know, the big problem, certainly in this country, is poor pensioners not being able to keep the heating on during winter, because that's when the vast majority of temperature-related deaths take place. So, if we want to tackle that problem, it's obvious what we do: cheap and reliable energy, rather than expensive and renewable. But
I wish I could take your calls on this, guys. We've already got one more guest to come, though, from the Adam Smith Institute. We're going to be talking about house building crisis, and it will be partly solved by actually training up 40,000 Brits as builders. Have we actually spotted a sensible policy from Labour, and will it actually happen? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
If we are importing criminals and we do not know who's coming into this country, then it's a problem for the British people. I do believe that there's cover-ups at civil service level. When I was in Parliament, I asked for the stats crimes per nationality be published, because you need to know if you're importing a problem and how to deal with that problem. But it's only, as you said, it's only just coming out now, and any crime against a child, yeah, they don't deserve to live, and they certainly don't deserve to be in our country, do they?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:53 is the time. Let's talk about jobs, and specifically jobs to build houses. Yes, builders. We need more houses. We haven't got enough builders. We keep importing more builders from abroad, and then they need more houses. We're kind of in a Ponzi scheme of house building being done by foreigners. So what a good idea that Labour has unveiled. OK, they also did it in March, but a bit more detail now. A £100 million plan to battle the housing crisis by training 40,000 builders by 2029. Let's talk about this with Maxwell Marlowe, who's Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. He's also Director of Policy at the YIMBY initiative. So YIMBY as in yes, in my backyard. A very good afternoon to you, Maxwell.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thanks
How
for
are you?
joining us. Very well indeed, and quite excited and not a little surprised. It appears that Labour have got a good policy that will actually do good things. Am I right?
It's marginal, really, Julia. I mean, it's a large amount of money for 40,000 workers by the end of this Parliament. So let's look at this in the round with the stats. So the housing industry, the construction industry takes on 200,000 people a year, and they lose 200,000 people a year. And they currently have enough people to do a lot of the building and construction that's required at the moment, but not enough to deliver that 1.5 million housing target, which the government probably won't be hitting anyway because of
they're already
reasons.
behind, and no one's hit
Way
their target before, even lower targets. But hold on a minute,
Exactly.
You say the building industry construction has got enough people. You try getting a builder round my way, you are absolutely struggling. People waiting months and months to find anyone who can carry out the work. We haven't got enough builders.
Well, you could say that, but at
I
the
know
same
that.
time,
Well, not round my way, we don't.
Well, this is a big thing. So half of SME, small, medium-sized enterprise house builders will probably go bust by the end of this Parliament. So that is thousands of companies that we rely on them very much. Well, because the planning system and the financing for the planning isn't there. So they've got this big bill going through Parliament at the moment. The planning and infrastructure bill doesn't go nearly far enough. So when you ask developers and builders, like I do with the YIMBY initiative, what's holding you up? They're just saying we've got this massive backlog of development that we're trying to get through, but the planning system isn't letting us bring on new builders or parts, whatever else.
It took me 6 months to get planning permission for a shed, for goodness sake. I mean, it's madness. But this is the thing. We were told there's this big planning reform. I cheered them on for this. Tories have tried to do it, talked about doing it, and then they had a load of Tory MPs in the Shires go, oh, no, none of my, they're all NIMBYs, not in my backyards. None of my constituents want to build it. Now we've got a lot of Labour MPs who are now representing those seats going, oh, we're not sure either. Everyone agrees we need to build more houses. They just want them built somewhere else.
Exactly. It's a huge, huge issue, and something that we've been grappling with as a country for years and years. I mean, I just saw your interview with Mr. Dale about, climate and, nature and water came up, but so did heat death, people dying of heat. I don't know if you know about this, Julia, but heat death is much, much higher in Europe than in really hot areas like Texas or Singapore or Malaysia. Do you know why? It's because we build AC units, air conditioning, which is basically illegal to do on new builds in the UK. In fact, it's forbidden by our building regulations. So the regulatory structure suffocates house building.
Literally mad. But again, it's a religious zealotry. It's not about fact. But I mean, surely training up more of our young people to do a worthwhile job, very rewarded job, often very well rewarded, very lucrative job, is a good thing.
It is a good thing, but you have to see where this money is going. It's not going to developers or people who, are on site doing the training. It's actually going to further education colleges. What I've seen it as is a bung to the unions,
More
to the
for our
education
mates.
unions. Exactly, 100 million quid for 40,000 traineeship places. That doesn't sound right. So you've got to look at this in a wider context of it's Labour doing this, and they do get along with their unions quite well. So we need to fix things like the apprenticeship levy, give more certainty to builders, and they can train up our youngsters to do the jobs that are needed.
I suppose also, given there's so many people who work in higher education or further education now working from home, I don't suppose you can give Zoom lessons on how to lay bricks, but they'll certainly try. Maxwell Marlowe, interesting to hear from you on that. We want to hear more, actually, in another interview about the YIMBY initiative, Yes in My Backyard. Thomas Slater, for years we've had this whole thing. It's not even NIMBY, it's banana, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. No one wants anything built. We need to have homes built. I don't care if my home goes down in value, if my daughter can afford to get onto the housing ladder.
No, absolutely. And all it takes is political will. There needs to be a clear-cut mandate for this kind of reform. There needs to be a political party that is willing to stand down all the people, whether they're NIMBYs in particular areas or just vested interests who like the status quo because it works for them.
And we can't just be building. I mean, round my way, they're just building constantly around every railway line. There's loads and loads.
You'll run out of that space.
You'll run out of those eventually. We need whole new town cities. We could also stop importing half the third world. That might help.
It's not making it easier, is it, building?
I don't think it's making it. I think if you import more people than houses you build, or even bedrooms you build, maybe you might have a problem. Ian Collins is here. Are you a NIMBY or a YIMBY?
Can I come back to that in a second? I'm going to just thank you for something this morning, the health warning you gave at the beginning of the show, because I was the victim of this morning.